All right, everybody. Welcome to the final round. So excited. The moment is finally here. I am thrilled to have the best judging pool in the whole competition circuit here in Arkansas. And if you guys thought the semifinals were made you break a sweat, get ready, buckle up. I want to let everybody know what the format of the final round is. It's a little bit different than the semis. You know, obviously you've got a little bit more of an audience in the room today. Still your standard 15-minute investment pitch, but this time you've got 20 minutes of Q&A with the judges. You will have a time signal at the 5-minute mark and the 1-minute mark, like yesterday. And then the judges will kick off with questions. Congratulations, competitors, all of you, for being here. When we started the Heartland Challenge 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, we certainly did not anticipate that our first events would be virtual. We had to make a fast pivot and learn on the fly and evaluate our work as we went and make adjustments as we got feedback, as we have done over the last 2 days. And that is the name of the game. And I have seen you all over the last 48 hours in your practice rooms, doing your run-throughs, changing your slides, getting additional feedback when you have the opportunity to meet judges in the halls and the events. I really want to applaud all of you for doing that. Keep it going. We've got more coming after this. But without further ado, I am going to kick off the judge introductions. MK Marsden is our lead judge for the final round. MK, thank you so much for doing this every year. We're never going to let you go, ever. I appreciate all of you so much. Good luck to the competitors. And MK, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Are we working? Yep. Okay, great. So yes, I'm MK Marsden. I've been judging this since 1986. I started judging at the University of Texas. I've judged in Canada. I've met many of you. I have to say, when I started this, the business plans were about a ton of paper. I used to have to take a week off work, and I was running a software company at the time, just to read through them. The quality of the entrepreneurs that are being produced through these competitions is amazing. So you are exceptional for being here. I've started 8 software companies, so I know good from not so good, and you really are just incredible. You're surrounded by judges that do this for a living. We judge things and people and business plans. So hear the question, answer it to the best of your ability, and get ready. So I'm just delighted to introduce the panel. We'll start here on the left, and we'll work our way across the table.
Chidozie Agwamba, I'm the managing partner of Symbiosis Capital Management. We are a Bentonville-based venture fund that focuses on investments in biotherapeutics across advanced and emerging therapeutic modalities, like cell therapy, gene editing, RNA, and the like, particularly as applied to serious and life-threatening human diseases like cancer, CNS, and cardiology.
Cleet.
I'm Cleet Brewer. I'm based here in Bentonville, Rogers, Arkansas, and the managing partner of New Road Capital Partners. We invest in the supply chain and consumer products, and we have been around about 10 years, about $800 million of assets under management, and currently investing out of our 4th fund.
Hey there, Candace Matthews-Brackey, general partner at Lightship Capital. We invest in remarkable founders throughout the Heartland, typically in CPG companies, e-commerce, sustainability, artificial intelligence, and healthcare.
Hi, I'm Angela Grayson. I am the lawyer heavy on this judging panel. I am a technology lawyer, intellectual property specifically, and I help science and technology early stage companies protect their products, brands, designs, and data.
Hello, Michael Bosch, managing partner of Atento Capital. I'm Tulsa-based, and Atento is an early-stage venture fund. We do pre-seed and seed investing where we lead, and then we do venture fund and kind of growth-stage investing where we don't lead. And so we're generalist investors and excited to hear the presentations.
Fantastic. Okay, Sarah, we're ready to go?
All right, team, whenever you're ready.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name's Parker Martin. This is Corey Cooney. We're here with EpiSLS to tell you about how we're changing the way that medicine handles allergies. But let's talk about why that's important. Everybody in this room knows somebody with allergies, whether that's tree nuts, dog dander, penicillin. People change their lives because of these. Today, allergies represent the 6th leading cause of chronic disease in the United States, and it's estimated that half of all people have at least one allergy. When we misdiagnose allergies, they cost the US healthcare system billions of dollars annually, and they contribute to significant morbidity through second-order effects of avoidance. People even lose their lives because of misdiagnosed allergies. Let's zoom in to one specific example. Penicillin. 32 million Americans, that's 1 in every 10 of us, have a penicillin allergy on our medical record. Yet when you actually test these patients, 95% of them are not truly allergic. That means I could give them penicillin and they'd be just fine. There are a lot of causes that contribute to this mislabeling, but the practical outcome is that we're avoiding a safe, cheap, and effective class of medication in about 30 million people who could safely receive it. And that avoidance carries a lot of risk. Just having a penicillin allergy on your medical record, regardless of its validity, increases your risk of developing a surgical site infection by 50%. If you have to stay in the hospital, your risk of developing a superbug infection jumps up by 30%. And this one group of patients, those with fake penicillin allergies, are estimated to cost the US healthcare system $37 billion each and every year. So we know that access to allergy testing is essential, but how do we do it today? Well, the gold standard in allergy testing has remained essentially unchanged in over 100 years. Even today, the best diagnostic we have is skin prick testing conducted by an allergist. This process involves epidermal and subsequently intradermal exposure to an allergen's epitope with a waiting period between each step to observe for signs of local mast cell degranulation. That was a lot of technical talk. So what this looks like in practice is soaking a needle in an allergen, pricking your skin and waiting to see if a bump develops. Then pricking your skin again, deeper this time, to wait to see if a bump develops in response. Despite what you might be thinking, this form of allergy testing is actually considered to be very accurate. But it requires a 2-hour appointment with a board-certified allergist. And there simply are not enough allergists in this country. There's only about 1 for every 50,000 patients. And that means it can take months to get an appointment, even if you're lucky enough to have an allergist in your community. Many parts of the country are not that lucky. Across the nation right now, there are people waiting in emergency departments, preparing to give birth, or anticipating an upcoming surgery, for whom skin prick allergy testing is not accessible. These limitations have led to necessary innovation. The market is demanding change, yet the solutions we've come up with leave a lot to be desired. Thermo Fisher Scientific offers a blood-based immunoassay. This can be ordered by any physician, but it requires us to take a blood sample from the patient and send it off to a specialized lab. It takes a minimum of 3 days to return a result, and even then, these blood-based tests are considered less accurate than in vivo skin prick testing. These are our only 2 options, and they each come with significant drawbacks that make them impractical or even impossible in many of the situations where patients would most benefit. As a result, patients often simply don't receive allergy testing when it would benefit them, going on to suffer the quality of life, morbidity, and second-order impacts of misdiagnosed allergies. But fortunately, we have a solution, and this is our solution. EpiSLS is a novel medical device that enables rapid, reliable, and accessible point-of-care allergy testing. It's patent pending with all intellectual property owned by their founding team, and it's already in clinical trial at the University of Michigan. It automates the same high-fidelity testing protocol used in in-office skin prick testing. This is bringing the gold standard into the 21st century. And it comes in 2 parts. The first part is the technology unit, what I'm holding here. This contains all of the hardware and software necessary for the device to operate. It's reusable and it's versatile. The second part are the applicator units. Unfortunately, our friends at the TSA do not like sharp objects, and so I wasn't able to bring an applicator to show you today. But these applicators are one-time use consumables that contain all of the allergy epitopes required for the test, as well as the microneedles necessary to apply them. They're specific to the allergy panel we're testing for and have to be thrown out and replaced after each test. So let's pretend that Corey comes to me as his primary care provider because he's concerned he's had a strange reaction to tree nuts. Yesterday, I would have had to tell him, I'm sorry, avoid the tree nuts. If you really want, I can refer you to an allergist, but it might take you 6 or even 9 months to get an appointment. Today, I can solve that problem myself. Slide the units together and use the adhesive to apply EpiSLS to any exposed skin. I press a button on the screen, and my work is done. EpiSLS automatically performs the entire test, from application to reading, interpretation, and finally reporting the outcome. This device is predicated on a novel sensing technology that I invented. This is an advanced form of computer vision that allows the device to measure real-world spatial data, sort of like an MRI machine. It's supported by artificial intelligence-powered data analysis software, which I wrote to mimic the same real reading process used in in-office skin prick testing. And all of that is combined with an apparatus for our automated allergen application to ensure the entire test can be completed in just 30 minutes from end to end without human intervention. But it's really that sensing technology that sets us apart. Under ideal circumstances, it has a sensitivity of 400 nanometers. That's 100 times more sensitive than the human eye, which allows the device to work faster and with more accuracy than traditional manual methods. In this way, physicians can feel confident in the results that EpiSLS offers them while bringing this highly specialized test to the point of care. On this slide, we see a traditional view of our advantages over those of our competitors. EpiSLS really is the only option that combines the accuracy of in vivo skin prick testing with the speed and accessibility of point-of-care access. And those benefits will bring value to those who interact with EpiSLS. To be clear, we do not expect that allergists will be our primary users. They may still opt to perform traditional skin prick testing. Instead, EpiSLS offers the opportunity for physicians who never previously performed allergy testing to bring this care to their patients. That means creating new streams of revenue for primary care providers, OB-GYNs, pediatricians, surgeons, and any other doctor who cares for patients with allergies. Hospital systems will see value through cost reduction. We're giving them the ability to avoid the costs associated with the use of second-line therapies, both the direct costs and the costs associated with caring for complications when they occur due to dubious allergies. But most importantly, everything that we do is centered on creating better outcomes for our patients as we strive to reduce the morbidity and mortality that we've discussed.
So we've talked about the problems with allergy testing, our solution, our technology, and what it means to stakeholders, but now we want to talk about our business. We'll be employing a razor and blade strategy, with our razor being represented by our technology unit and being sold at a modest profit margin to encourage provider adoption. On the other side, our applicator will represent our blade and be sold at a much higher profit margin. But even at these high profit margins, because of the nature of insurance reimbursement in the United States, we know that physicians will continue to make a profit on each test they deliver. And in little as 50 tests, they can break even on their device investment. You know, on a micro scale, that's great, but we want to understand, what does our market really look like? We don't consider ourselves competing with current allergy testing markets, and instead believe we offer a novel point-of-care allergy test. So we took a bottom-up approach to sizing our market. First, we identified a beachhead. For us, that's penicillin testing in US teaching hospitals. We assumed a 20% penetration rate, and knowing that we have a $1,000 profit margin on each technology unit that we sell, and a $70 profit margin on every test that we sell, we calculated that out to a serviceable, attainable market of $78 million. If we step that back to all US teaching hospitals, that would represent about $390 million. And then on a US scale of all hospitals, that would represent almost $885 million. So we have a $78 million market, specifically in the niche of penicillin testing. But what's amazing about our technology is that it's versatile. We can actually test for any type 1 allergy. That's drug, food, and environmental allergies. Here on the screen, we provided some of the most common tests, but we can combine any of these tests into an applicator panel and run that separately. So it's really the versatility of our applicators and the plug-and-play nature of our technology that allows us to expand to the ever-growing market of allergy testing in the United States. But how are we going to enter the market? We are taking a 3-phased approach to entering the market. And in our first phase, we're focusing specifically on penicillin testing in academic medical centers in the surgical setting. And while I describe that, that's extremely niche, but we believe that academic medical centers represent the centers of innovation in healthcare, and their adoption of our technology will allow it to spread both in hospitals and in different regions. So that moves us into phase 2, our downstream expansion. In our downstream expansion, we're going to be looking to affiliated medical centers, affiliated medical groups, and really moving outside of the surgical setting and into the office setting. And with that move, we'll also expand our applicator offerings. So, past penicillin, we'll look to tree nut allergies. We'll look to animal dander, things that are more commonly tested by physicians in primary care. And then finally, phase 3, we'll look to strategic partnerships. Retail pharmacies, Walmart care clinics for our friends in Bentonville. we'll want to expand to any patients wherever they need allergy testing. For our phase 1 to be successful, we need to roll out successfully into large academic medical centers. Thankfully for us, we already have a partnership with the University of Michigan where our clinical trial is being performed. We just recently created a partnership with the Southwest Pediatric Device Consortium, and they have ties to the Texas Medical Center. And in the coming weeks, we have calls with both Stony Brook Medical Center and the University of Southern California. That's all to say, for our phase 1 to be successful, we need these key relationships to drive our adoption into these medical centers. Earlier, we talked about the $37 billion number for misdiagnosed penicillin allergies, and for me personally, that's really, really hard to conceptualize. It's just too big of a number, so we wanted to provide a more tangible example. So each year, 3.8 million patients in academic medical center surgical settings receive second-line avoidable treatment because misdiagnosed penicillin allergies. That puts them at a 50% increased risk of surgical site infections, and at a cost of $25,000 per infection, that translates out to $950 million in unnecessary spending in the US healthcare system each year, all because of misdiagnosed penicillin allergies. What's more striking is at a 3% mortality rate, that means 1,200 people die each year because of misdiagnosed penicillin allergies. Clearly, there's costs both in dollars and in lives, and this lack of point-of-care allergy testing is something that EpiSLS can fix today. Now shifting gears to the office setting, we wanted to make sure that physicians are actually financially incentivized to use our technology. Thankfully for us, there's already existing allergy CPTs or reimbursement codes that our technology can take advantage of. And knowing Medicare rates, we know that each test will get reimbursed about $130 to $140. We also know that studies show physicians expect about 90 to 100% gross profit margins in all the services they provide. Even locking in those high profit margins in the gray bar there, you can see that EpiSLS can still get 800 to over 2,000% profit margins on each of our tests that we deliver. That's all to say that obviously EpiSLS is financially incentivized in the transaction, but more importantly, physicians are also incentivized. They will adopt our technology because it's the best solution there, and it also gives them high quality revenue. We know that you need to invest in a sound company, so here we've provided our revenue as a function of technology adoption. You can see as we phase our technology, we expect exponential growth to occur, and by year 5, we expect about $105 million in revenue. We wanted to provide an overview of where we've been and where we're going. Since Parker identified the problem in 2018, a lot has happened. We have a clinical-ready prototype. Our patent has been submitted. We've began our clinical trial, and to date have received $60,000 in non-dilutive grant funding. Fast forward to today, we're completing that clinical trial, beginning our application to the FDA, and by 2024, hope to have FDA approval and a subsequent product launch in 2025. So why are we here today? Well, we're looking for $350,000 in a convertible note, and that money will go to directly what I was just talking about, finishing our clinical trial, beginning our FDA approval process with a pre-submission packet, understanding if a 510K or de novo pathway is right for us. And as you can see, the device obviously is quite large, so we need to work on sourcing custom parts to make that size smaller and more commercial ready. And then we can see here that we've provided some key milestones tied with different financial and team growth targets. So we want to have conscious growth and grow our small team as we meet these key milestones. And by 2026, we'll continue, after product launch, continue to explore subsequent funding rounds and then explore exit opportunities. We did want to provide one example of an exit opportunity. That's Aphadia. Aphadia is actually the company that created the blood-based immunoassay that we spoke of earlier. They were acquired by Thermo Fisher in 2011 for $3.5 billion, which represents a 16 times EBITDA multiple. And then finally, we want to talk about our team. You've already met Parker. Parker's an MD, MBA, and Master's of Engineering. I realize that is a mouthful. His background is in clinical medicine, but he's self-taught in computer science and electrical engineering, and all the hardware and software that you've seen today was designed by Parker himself. My name's Corey Cooney. I'm an MBA at the University of Michigan. Prior to business school, I worked in healthcare reimbursement, working for those academic medical centers and physician groups across the country to ensure their revenue was paid correctly. And then, like we talked about, we want that organic growth. So these are some of the future hires we'll have. And we have an amazing advising team. We have experts in penicillin allergies, former leads of the flagship ventures offices, FDA advisors, and people that have actually created medical devices and have taken them to market. People who are going to give us the advice that we need here today and in the future. So we've talked about the problems with point-of-care allergy testing, and the lack of in both dollars and in lives. We know that we have the solution, the technology, and the team to solve that. We are EpiSLS. I'd like to thank you all for your time, and if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Thank you, team.
Yeah, I'll start first if you don't mind. Can you tell me, so the current level of functionality, we are looking at testing penicillin, is that correct?
Yes, that's our first beachhead market, is addressing patients who have these false penicillin allergies, receiving surgery in academic medical centers.
Okay, and so you had expected to have clearance by 2024. That is for penicillin alone?
No, actually, so we do not expect that it's going to require a separate clearance for each of these tests. The epitopes that are required for each test are actually already cleared by the companies that produce them. We're going to be sourcing the epitopes from the same commercial sources that are used in in-office skin prick testing right now. We'll need to get FDA approval for the device, the application and the sensing, but the individual tests, those different epitopes, that's not our responsibility.
And you talked a little bit about offices and offices purchasing the device. How much is a typical doctor's office spending on testing? You know, if I take my child to the pediatrician, we can get a few things tested on location.
Yes.
But how much is a typical doctor's office spending on testing equipment?
Well, your typical doctor's office, your pediatrician specifically, cannot test for allergies today. So that is not even a service that they can offer you. This opens up the opportunity for them to offer that care to you and your children when you take them there. And it opens up the opportunity for them to produce new streams of revenue. As we showed, they're going to be getting around $60 to $70 per test they conduct for each allergy panel they test for.
I think my question is more around how much is a doctor's office paying for devices to do any testing?
Right. I suppose I don't have that number off the top of my head of those numbers outside of allergy testing right now.
Great, thank you.
Could you talk about the design of your clinical trial at Michigan and how you think about the regulatory pathway in terms of whether 510K or de novo, what implications that has for what you need to prove preclinically?
Absolutely. So the clinical trial right now is set up as a non-inferiority trial set against the current gold standard, which is the manual skin prick testing. We're looking to make sure that we can hit the same benchmarks of specificity and sensitivity as those skin prick testing that's done every day right now. As far as FDA path, we are putting together our preliminary submission to the FDA and looking for expertise in the regulatory space so that we can make sure we do this properly. Of course, we're hoping for the 510K pathway, but we think the de novo pathway might be the direction we end up going.
Sorry, just a quick follow-up.
Yes.
In terms of the size, the trial, could you talk about the size of it,
Yes.
the number of patients, how quickly it's enrolling, and how you think about potential delays, delays there, and sort of proper sample size?
Yeah, so we've had a lot of delays so far because of COVID research delays. It has been, it's been a frustrating experience on that part. But of course, it's important to stay safe. We have IRB approval right now to enroll up to 100 patients in our clinical trial, though we believe we'll only need around 30 to properly power it.
Great presentation, guys. Truly excellent. 2 questions for you. It sounds like you're the inventor,
That's correct.
but does the university own the intellectual property?
It does not. No, the university has no intellectual property claims here. It's all owned by me.
Excellent. And then the one question I had around your name, EpiSLS, do you
Yes.
think that there might be any trademark issues with that name,
Not to our knowledge, no.
even though there's EpiPen out there?
Yes, so epi is a Latin prefix just meaning top, right? So that's used in many different places. I don't suspect that will be an issue.
Okay, it might be.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, well, we'll investigate that.
Yes,
we'll continue
that's
to
what I
look
want you to do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Definitely investigate that.
Yeah.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Great.
Quick question. So you mentioned you were raising $350,000 to get to 2023 and then raising $2 million for your seed round. Is that right?
Yes.
What are the exact kind of use of proceeds for the $350,000? What's the breakdown? I saw this slide.
You want to take it?
Yeah. So $350,000, and we're pretty early on, so we don't necessarily have the valuation in mind, so that's why we set a convertible note. That money is going to go to, once we hear back from the FDA, things are going to probably change very rapidly, I would imagine. So if we understand de novo, a lot of our costs are going to go directly to funding, expansion of clinical trial, whatever, data is needed there. Beyond that, I think a lot of sourcing of custom hardware. You can see right now, I don't personally want to put that on my arm to get an allergy test, so we do want to get it smaller and smaller. So that's going to require sourcing custom materials. So we believe that's going to be like a lot of our cost is figuring that pieces out. So finding smaller cameras, finding smaller light sources, shrinking it so that it's more ready for commercialization. So that's, I think, a lot of our focus.
To be clear, all the hardware in here is commercially available hardware. Much of it you could walk over to the local Walmart and find there yourself. And if you had the proper software, recreate this. We want to create a smaller version using custom sourced hardware that will allow us to miniaturize the technology.
Sorry, could I follow up on that?
Yes.
So help me understand where your projections for the cost of the device come from. What is sort of currently achieved sort of in terms of what you're purchasing today in your bill of materials?
Yes.
And what requires sort of, what are you anticipating in terms of sourcing benefits and et cetera?
Absolutely. So the current prototype I actually built for $400.
Okay.
So we're padding that quite a bit, up to $2,000, expecting that custom sourced hardware may be more expensive.
Okay. Okay. And then just a quick follow-up on that. Just to the question that was asked earlier about what are doctors spending today in terms of devices, I wonder, have you considered not making the doctors buy it at all?
Yeah, so that's something we're exploring both. I think we mentioned like a modest profit margin. We also are exploring just breaking even on that, just selling it at cost, or just giving it away for free to encourage just adoption. They're all good questions, and I think as we learn more about the true cost, we're doing a lot of assumptions to figure out the true final cost of goods sold. Once we understand that, we will probably explore some of those options, but it's a great point. Hospitals obviously have the capital and the money to pretty much buy these devices. Physicians might have a different approach, so we might actually just take two different kind of business models in that sense. When we sell one to hospitals via group purchasing organizations or whatever it may be, and then when we sell to physicians, we might take a different sales strategy. But great question, thank you.
Did you say earlier after 50 tests it pays for itself?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, that just smells like a recurring model opportunity versus selling the equipment outright through the distribution that hospitals are a nightmare to sell to. Ask Jeff over there.
Yeah,
So
that's a really good point.
the mimicking that you did of the allergy testing to come up with an algorithm, can you kind of tell me about that? Like, how deep did you do? Like, how many tests are you looking at, and how are you redefining that and using that to get smarter as you build it, or is that
so
what you can divulge, I guess?
I guess you're referring to the artificial intelligence data analysis software, right? And you're asking how many tests I train it on?
Yeah.
So that's a mistake here. So this is not a convolutional neural network. There's no black box here. We understand how our technology works, right? This is more accurately conceived as a classical approach to machine learning.
Okay.
Rather than a convolutional neural network. Okay. So it doesn't rely on a large training set as you might be anticipating when I say artificial intelligence.
Okay. It's more defined already.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah.
So you basically just mean that a red bump is not that hard to see?
So you're asking
A
me?
red bump is not that hard to see.
So it turns out, right, there's a lot to unpack there, more than you might expect in that comment. So it turns out red bumps can be hard to see, though, right? Especially when we're asking physicians to make to distinguish millimeter and sub-millimeter changes in the skin using their naked eye. Eyeballing a sub-millimeter change can be hard, right? And that erythema, that redness, actually doesn't correlate to the degree of allergic reaction at all. So we have to look for other surrogate markers.
Does the machine learning vary by the age of the patient with the allergy and the severity of the allergy?
It's a really good question. No, so it does not change based on the age. Pediatric and adult populations both have similar cutaneous reactions. As far as the severity of the reaction, no, this is qualitative, not quantitative. There's unfortunately no way to measure the severity of your next allergic reaction. In fact, even your most recent allergic reaction doesn't predict the severity of your next one. So we're able to take this snapshot and say whether or not you're allergic, but nobody is able to predict how bad your next reaction is going to be.
And whose machine learning platform are you using?
I'm using my own.
You created your own?
Yes.
And when did you start this?
When did I start it?
A lot of times.
2018.
Okay.
Yes.
And then just on your question, because it's kind of the same vein, skin tone as well was something that we were concerned about to make sure that it was equitable. And what we actually found, which was was surprising, was that lighter skin tones actually have inter-reflectability. So it was creating actually a problem for the machine. So the machine actually just naturally, for darker skin tones, reads more efficiently at the beginning. So we had to work around and figure out a way to actually correct it for lighter skin tones. So that's just a big takeaway, is that we're really thinking about all the different health equity importance.
Yeah, that was a really interesting science problem, actually, that I did not expect, but was fascinating when I first realized it.
Quick question, if we have time.
Yeah.
Dying to know, just from an IP perspective, because the device and the applicators are separate, and it looks like you filed a provisional application at some point.
Yes.
Are you thinking about potentially a separate stream of intellectual property protecting the applicators as well?
Yes, so we submitted the provisional patent. Now we have a full non-provisional patent submitted as well. It's the non-provisional patent we have, to my understanding, I was fortunate enough to work with an actual professor of intellectual property up at Wayne State University, covers both the applicator and the technology unit, with the opportunity to kind of split these up into derivative patents later down the line.
Good.
Good.
Is there an opportunity for to look for additional grant funding, or are you just really focused on venture capital or just investment in general from angels?
Definitely opportunity in government, like SBIRs, is something that I was literally just on the website scouring, looking for which ones match up best to us. And I think there probably are opportunities there, and I think something we will continue to explore.
And you guys are graduating this year and going full-time into building the business? Or
2023.
Both of us
2023.
2023. So we have
So
another
you're going
year.
to continue through school and keep this going, and then you're going to graduate and go build the company.
This
Yes.
is the intention, yes.
Fantastic.
And you're passionate about this. So
I am.
why is this important to you?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, I have a list in my notes app on my phone of dozens of projects I want to work on someday. And I picked this one because I think it really is important. I realized that while I was doing my surgical rotation, I had a patient who ended up in the ICU with a surgical site infection because of exactly this problem. That patient unfortunately passed away, and that made a big impact on me. That's how I first started learning about this and going down the rabbit hole that led to this invention. When I did that, I realized that it wasn't as small as that one individual patient. We talked about some of the numbers here, but it really has significant morbidity and mortality attached to it. This is a real opportunity to help a lot of people in a space that hasn't been innovated in, like I said, over 100 years. So it's something that I am passionate about, trying to solve this problem. The fact that it can save the healthcare system a lot of money and create nice revenue for us is a nice addition. But after seeing that firsthand and understanding the impact it makes on the patients, it's something I'm passionate about.
Yeah, my brother has a deathly peanut allergy growing up. We obviously were fortunate enough to be able to get to an allergist, get the access, understand what he was allergic to, what he's not allergic to. But it had so many impacts on his life, and I realized understanding, penicillin allergies are super important. Understanding if your child is allergic to tree nuts, if they're allergic to animal dander. Those are important things which sound really small, because some of them maybe are small. If I get a little sneezing near a dog, but if I can't eat a peanut, that does have large implications to the rest of my life, for my brother specifically. So I think getting access in healthcare, whatever it may be, and for us it's allergy testing, I think is key. So that's what I'm passionate about. And then from the kind of dorky side of what I did prior to going to business school, I love healthcare reimbursement, which I'm probably the only person in that room. It's I think it's fascinating, and for us, we're really fortunate to have the CPTs and thinking through how we can apply those and bring revenue to hospitals and to physicians in a new way. I think is really, for me, just as a reimbursement nerd, really fun.
We see a lot of things in the market around not just allergies, but also sensitivities. And so there's some large corporations, startups that have gone into specifically food sensitivities and other sensitivities. So how could you potentially disrupt that market?
Yeah, so I don't want to disparage anyone on a live stream. Those food sensitivity tests are not clinically accurate. They're not things that are meant to inform clinical decision making and are not in the same space that we are evaluating here. We're looking at true clinical allergies and the implications those have on patients' health.
Thank you.
So how do you think about going to market with just penicillin versus going to market with multiple tests at once in terms of adoption? And the second part of that question is, if it does matter, why would you raise so little money instead of raising more money earlier to do more, to validate more tests initially?
Yeah.
Okay, I can take it. So part of the reason we decided to pursue penicillin first is because we understand there's going to be the logistical challenge of developing these applicators, getting them to the places where they need to be used. Starting that process with a single applicator, testing for a single drug, we believe is going to be easier. There's also a lot of literature talking specifically about penicillin allergies, the necessity of testing for them, and the benefit that the value we can bring to people and hospital systems through those tests. We believe that's going to make it the easiest first beachhead for us to address, where it's almost going to be a no-brainer when we can calculate exactly how much this is going to save every hospital. You get out to other things like tree nuts, which are very important, right? If somebody's allergic to food allergies, it profoundly affects their life, but it's harder to quantify the financial cost of those. And so it might be harder to drive that adoption, particularly while we're trying to investigate and develop the logistics of supply chain.
So you've talked about the traditional competitive, no changing world.
Yes.
What about the other two, Dougie, who's her doctor, and insurance nerd that are in a garage that are creating some alternative solution? Who are you bumping into in the innovation side of the business?
Yeah, so there's an interesting startup company actually based out of Canada who's trying to bring the blood-based immunoassay into the allergist's office. Instead of having the allergist send the blood sample off to Thermo Fisher's lab, bringing that immunoassay as a big kind of refrigerator-sized machine into the allergist's office so that they can run that test right in their office. That would solve that 3-day lag time, but it doesn't solve the problem that it's still hard to get access to an allergist with only one out for every 50,000 patients, and it doesn't solve the problem that blood-based immunoassays are less accurate than skin-based skin prick testing.
Okay.
And remind us by what percentage? I know that you said it before.
Yeah.
By what percentage?
How much less accurate are they?
Yes.
So it depends on the test we're doing specifically. Penicillin is a really good example, though. It's literally impossible to do a blood-based immunoassay for penicillin. They do not exist.
Thank you.
And peanut allergies and tree allergies?
Those two can be tested for using blood-based immunoassays, and there's conflicting literature about exactly how much less accurate it is. But the general consensus is that it is not as accurate as skin prick testing, and often if you go to an allergist with a blood-based test, they'll want confirmatory skin-based testing as well.
What data gets stored in the machine learning engine?
Yeah. So again, this is not a convolutional neural network. We are not changing weights of neurons as we go through. So we don't actually have to collect that data. It's a classical machine learning approach where we have preset algorithms to be able to identify when there's been an allergic reaction. So we're not storing patient data for further refinement of that for some neural network.
And how do you find the bias that exists in machine learning?
Yeah, so what sort of bias are you talking about? Are you talking about the actual machine learning term for bias?
Yeah, because depending what data you put in first to design your algorithms, you've instilled some level of bias in the machine learning. So how do you, what are you provisioning for to identify the bias and remove it over time?
Yeah. So again, this is not a convolutional neural network, right? So we're not trying to fit a line to the best curve. We're not trying to fit a curve to the points with a black box. What we're doing is actually mimicking the same sort of algorithm that physicians use intrinsically when they're looking at these allergic wheels, trying to measure the markers.
Okay.
Is there enough training data amongst all skin types?
Yeah, okay. Again, this does not require training data, right? Because it's not a convolutional neural network. But we are collecting data through our clinical trial of all skin types to ensure that it works equally well for all skin tones. And as Corey said before, we were very surprised at the beginning. It worked better for darker skin tones. We've been able to science our way around that so that it works equally well for all now, but we are ensuring that we have a diverse patient population. We're fortunate that because of the style of this, it's not randomized control. We can make sure that we have a good population of different skin tones and ethnicities to ensure it works for everybody equally.
Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you all so
Thank
much.
All right, everybody. Next up, we have Beam Commerce from the University of Waterloo. Team, as a reminder, you have 15 minutes for your pitch, uninterrupted, and then there will be 20 minutes of Q&A with our amazing panel of finalist judges. And judges, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves before every team, just so that everybody gets to hear the amazing people that you are. Thank you again so much for being here. MK, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Yeah, I'm happy to introduce myself over and over. So I'm MK Marsden. I've been judging the competition since 1986. I'm a serial entrepreneur, computer scientist, data scientist. I live in New York and West Palm Beach. I fly in for this. I am very impressed by the caliber of the business plans that are being presented this year. When I first started, it was a ton of paper. I had to take the week off to read the business plans, and we still didn't mostly understand what we were being presented. So you are an exceptional class. Congratulations. Now I'm going to introduce the rest of the judges, and we'll see what you can do with your final presentation.
Hello, I'm Michael Bosch. I lead Atento Capital in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Atento is an early stage investment firm that invests in pre-seed and seed where we lead, and then we invest in venture funds in a little bit later stage where we don't lead. And prior to that, my background is as an entrepreneur.
Hi, I'm Angela Grayson. I am the principal and founder of Precipice IP. We are a technology law boutique. We help science and technology startups protect their products, brands, designs, and data.
Hi, Candace Matthews-Breckeen, general partner at Lightship Capital. We invest in remarkable founders throughout the Heartland. We invest in consumer packaged goods and services, e-commerce, sustainability, artificial intelligence, and healthcare. We invest at the pre-seed and seed stage.
Clete Brewer, I'm the managing partner of New Road Capital Partners based here in Rogers, Arkansas. We have about $800 million of assets under management. We primarily invest in supply chain, logistics, and consumer products, Series A, Series B stage.
Chidozie Agwamba, I'm managing partner at Symbiosis. We are a biotherapeutics-focused, multi-stage investor. We focus on advanced and emerging therapeutic modalities like cell therapy, gene editing, RNA in the microbiome across serious and life-threatening human disease.
Fantastic. Okay.
Based in Bentonville.
Gentlemen, feel free to begin.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the introductions. My name is Dhruv. This is my co-founder, Aman. And our company is Beam Commerce. We build software to boost sales for e-commerce stores. A few months ago, when we applied to the Heartland Challenge, our monthly recurring revenue was $35,000. In the upcoming month, we expect to be at $85,000 in monthly recurring revenue, still fully bootstrapped because what I'm about to show you is incredibly effective. Over the last several years, the cost of digital marketing has increased by 17.5 times. And this affects all businesses. The small retailers trying to keep their heads above the water using Facebook ads, and the large direct-to-consumer brands whose million-dollar marketing budgets couldn't account for this. The world thinks e-commerce is booming, and although it is gaining popularity, some of the infrastructure that allowed e-commerce businesses to acquire customers is slowly collapsing. Spending more and more on ads is just not an option anymore. Instead, merchants are looking for new opportunities to increase the average amount an existing customer spends on their store. But when a customer is shopping online, there's a million questions going through their mind. What's the best color? Will they like it? What's the right size? And it can be a little overwhelming at times. But there's a feeling of incredible excitement and euphoria when they've just decided what they're going to buy and they complete the checkout process. Call this the transaction moment. And that moment is magical. You have their undivided attention, and there's a huge opportunity to change both the customer relationship, but also the economics of that transaction. And that's why we built AfterSell. Normally, after a customer completes their checkout, they're usually redirected to an order confirmation or a thank you page. EpiSLS changes this by implementing a new page with offers that appear after that checkout but before the thank you page. The customer can then accept the offer without having to re-enter any of their information. But we go one step further. We've introduced the EpiSLS network, an exclusive, scalable acquisition channel within the transaction moment for the world's largest brands. These brands can show their offers on the order confirmation page of stores that have opted in to join the EpiSLS network. Customers are 7 times more likely to engage with these offers because they've just completed a transaction. Stores are able to optimize their user experience by showing relevant, high-quality partner offers to their customers while unlocking additional profit. Every time a customer accepts this offer, the store gets paid. And partners are able to expand their customer acquisition channels beyond just paid search and social media ads. So to summarize, EpiSLS shows 2 types of offers. Merchants can choose between showing one-click upsells, which show after the checkout, and they can show their own products, or ad offers on the order confirmation page from our list of partners. The interesting thing, though, is that e-commerce is just getting started. The pandemic accelerated the adoption of e-commerce by over 10 years. To put this into perspective, this is how many more people would use food delivery services, such as Uber Eats, more frequently after the pandemic. This is how many more people would use video conferencing platforms, such as Zoom, more frequently after the pandemic. This is how many more people said that they would shop online more frequently after the outbreak. E-commerce is here to stay, and this makes e-commerce apps one of the largest market opportunities in SaaS today, the total market size of $37.5 billion. Our business model has evolved to support 2 revenue streams. The first is subscription revenues for providing SaaS services to e-commerce stores. Along with EpiSLS, we currently have apps that help with upselling, order tracking, store design, shop quizzes, and more. Currently, EpiSLS is our only paid app, and we'll be adding paid plans to all of our apps by Q3 this year. In the upcoming month, we expect to drive $40,000 in subscription revenue. Our second revenue stream is through our partner network, which uses a cost per conversion model and allows us to have skin in the game. Advertisers are willing to pay an average of $30 per conversion, of which a percentage is given to the e-commerce store. We have over 6,000 stores using our apps, and many of them have already opted in to join the EpiSLS network, with more opting in every single day. In fact, the EpiSLS network already includes 50,000 monthly impressions, and with an average conversion rate that we're seeing of 3%, we expect to see $45,000 from this channel in the upcoming month. Our impressions and conversion rate will drastically improve as we scale the number of opt-ins we're getting and learn more from the data we're collecting. So in total, from both subscription and partner revenue, we expect $85,000. But the metric we're most excited about is the value we're able to drive our customers. Our merchants have made over $35 million in additional revenue using our apps. Our competitors have been around for a long time, and they've done an incredible job at laying the foundation for e-commerce to grow into what it is today. However, we have a few key competitive advantages. First, we're building an ecosystem of apps that share data. E-commerce apps were created to help store owners do some of the extra work of running an online business. But this got more crazy with more apps, since the apps themselves started having their own problems. They're too hard to set up, they don't talk to each other, or they're incompatible with my store theme. Beam is a suite of apps that uses the same design patterns across all of them, so anyone technical or non-technical can set up the apps in under 5 minutes. We offer seamless interoperability, which means our apps talk to each other about everything. And we use smart algorithms to make our apps compatible with all store themes right out of the box. Our multi-app business model allows us to sell multiple solutions to the same customer, giving them a consolidated source of great tools. And we see this, and we see the impact this has for many of our customers. This isn't our only customer who quotes that they've tried out multiple Beam products and loved the experience. This allows us to grow our suite significantly faster than our competitors. Our second competitive advantage is the economics of our business model. Let's take an average customer that does 1,000 orders per month on their store. A competitor would charge $100 a month for their app. We can charge $50 a month because we know that they're going to try another Beam app and join the after-sale network. This allows us to have a higher customer acquisition cost while giving them a lower price because we're able to leverage their screen real estate to charge a different stakeholder. And this model is quite difficult to replicate because creating apps that seamlessly share data take a lot of time to build and a lot of data to be effective. And the partnerships we're building through the after-sale network have longer sales cycles and higher switching costs because we integrate with their data and reporting systems. Our third competitive advantage is our memorable brand. We have deep personal relationships with some of the top influencers in the e-commerce space, which allows us to market and promote our apps on a platform that fewer players have access to. And we've also invested into creative brand assets that people can easily identify and associate with Beam apps. We see the impact of both our influencer campaigns and our brand assets on our customers. For example, many of the top customers use after-selling as a keyword replacement for post-purchase upselling. We see this trickle down into how many of our installs come directly from people searching for after-sell.
At Beam, we are fundamentally a customer-centric company. At a high level, we have 3 core customer segments: dropshippers, small to medium-sized businesses, and large-scale direct-to-consumer brands. We've been able to learn from all of these to sufficiently scale in each segment. The first segment we began learning from were dropshippers. These are commonly new entrepreneurs who do not hold inventory. We decided to start with this segment as we had experience ourselves in running a dropshipping store. And as we talked to them, we were able to learn about their pain points, and we started to gain traction within the segment. As after-sale grew, we noticed that small to medium-sized businesses started to also install our apps. So we asked them, what can we do to help your business grow? Their responses gave us a North Star and allowed us to start building out new features for after-sale, as well as creating new apps, which led to the creation of the Beam Commerce App Suite. And the final segment we've been able to learn from are large-scale direct-to-consumer brands. For example, one store that uses after-sale is called Feastables, a snack company owned by the famous YouTuber Mr. Beast. And these types of customers are typically looking for extensive technologies and new advanced revenue generation opportunities. At Beam, we have 5 main growth channels that drive our business. And those are the Shopify App Store, e-commerce influencers, social ad channels, tech integrations, and cold outreach. We started off by launching our apps through the Shopify App Store. We chose Shopify as it's one of the fastest growing e-commerce platforms, with 87% of merchants stating that they rely on apps to run their business, and on average, having 6 apps installed per store. We decided to start with a singular platform in order to keep our initial development costs as low as possible. However, as we prove out the market and scale up our users, we're looking to expand onto a greater number of platforms. The Shopify App Store has been a great avenue of organic traffic for our business. And the reason for that is since we've been able to optimize the keywords in our listing to rank higher, and we've been able to generate hundreds of positive 5-star reviews on our apps. And the results have been shown in each app launch. For instance, after-sale took 16 weeks to reach its first 300 users, and this was our first app. Our next app, Outsell, reached 300 users in just the first 8 weeks. And our most recent app launch, Trackaroo, was able to reach 300 users in just 3 weeks. The next growth channel we've been able to take advantage of are partnering with e-commerce influencers. And e-commerce influencers are typically educators in the space which teach the business model to others on different social platforms like YouTube or TikTok. And we've been lucky enough to build relationships with these individuals through our previous businesses. Through associating with these trusted and respected influencers, we not only acquire customers, however, it also elevates our brand too. The next growth channel we've been exploring is social ad channels, such as Facebook ads and Reddit ads, as well as search ads through the Shopify App Store. And we've been using these channels to mainly acquire larger scale direct-to-consumer brands. As well, we've started building out tech integrations with other apps in the space. So for instance, this is one of our apps, Perfect Product Finder Quiz, and we've been able to build out integrations with some popular email marketing platforms such as Klaviyo and MailChimp. And through doing this, it just provides a lot more utility to our app, as well as trust to some larger merchants. And the final growth strategy we've been using is the traditional sales cold outreach model. We're reaching out to approximately 1,000 leads per month through email, and with an appointment booking rate of 3% and closing rate of 50%, we're signing on approximately 15 large-scale direct-to-consumer brands per month. One of the core risks that we face at our business is the dependence on the Shopify App Store. And although Shopify is consistently building out new tooling for app developers and is really nurturing that relationship, we understand that there is an innate risk of depending on just one platform. And that's why we're looking to expand onto further platforms in the coming months. The first platform we're looking to expand onto is Magento, a company owned by Adobe. And the reason we've decided to expand to this platform is due to their higher percentage of enterprise-level stores. Our go-to-market strategy for Magento is to start by building out a customer waitlist. And we've had several Magento merchants reach out to us asking us to expand onto their platform, with many even offering to pay. So we're planning to build out a waitlist of approximately 100 stores. And with an estimated average revenue per user of $100 on this platform, we expect to launch on Magento with $10,000 in monthly recurring revenue. Growth on Magento will be very similar to Shopify. They have a similar app store, so we'll take our learnings from Shopify in terms of review generation and app store optimization and apply that to the Magento app store as well. And to scale up, we'll take those familiar growth channels which we've already proven out on the Shopify app store, such as influencer partnerships, social ads, and cold outreach sales, and apply that onto this platform too. Once proven out, we'll look to explore to even more platforms based on the expected ROI of each. Across all of our apps, we're on track to reach $85,000 in monthly recurring revenue in the next month, and we have an average revenue per paying user of $50. And we're just getting started. In the short term, we plan to take all of our free apps paid and to grow the after-sale network. In the medium term, we're looking to move away from our current contracting model to start hiring in-house in order to better retain our talent. And in the long term, we're looking to expand onto new platforms. Before Beam, our teams built a $2 million e-commerce store, a YouTube channel business with 75 million views, and we've already sold our first SaaS company. And we have support of some of the best in the industry. Some of our advisors have scaled their stores to nearly $200 million in annual revenue with over 5 million customers. So with our domain knowledge team and advisors, we believe that we are the right team to be building Beam. The $50,000 from the Heartland Challenge will be extremely valuable to our business in turning our 4 free apps paid. It will allow us to build out billing systems for each of these 4 apps, as well as a unified billing system across the entire suite to help with our sales efforts. So to summarize, at Beam, we're boosting sales for e-commerce stores. We do this through a suite of apps to help with upselling, store design, order tracking, and more. We're on track to reach $85,000 in monthly recurring revenue next month, fully bootstrapped. We've generated our merchants over $35 million. We have over 6,000 active businesses using our apps, and this really works. They're reporting boosts in revenue of over 30%. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to our pitch. We'd love to open the floor to any questions.
Thank you.
Thanks, gentlemen. So guess who invented the first transactional email platform? I bet it's you.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I love your space. And thanks to me, you don't have can spam issues, which we had to manage for you. So be grateful for that. But I'm going to withhold my questions for the next little bit, but just know I'm coming your way.
I'm actually nervous now, too. So you guys don't have an ask on raising any money. You're just planning to bootstrap it and just take the winnings of this and keep it rolling till kind of what's your thoughts there, just so I understand?
Yeah, actually, I think a lot of our conversations with judges throughout this competition have also influenced some of the thoughts I'm about to present on this. But I think one of the things we really are still focused on is trying to take all of our apps paid. Probably will yield a higher valuation, just proves out a lot of the hypotheses in terms of risk that investors would be taking on us. But in the end, I think we want to go all the way, and investment capital is going to be a big part of that. And something that a judge said yesterday that I thought was very important was we'd want to take smart money. And so I think it's really important for us to find an investor that sort of aligns with a lot of things that we want to do, but also comes in at the right time and from like the right angle and is able to provide the supports we do need. And so we will end up raising probably after the apps go paid though. That would just be the right way to go.
Sure. Yeah, it's impressive to bootstrap it to where you've done now. Are y'all, everybody's a student?
Yeah, we're all undergrads.
And so you guys have had a SaaS exit as undergrad students, and
Yeah.
now you're building your second SaaS company as an undergrad student?
Yeah, so in second year, we built a social network in like the ed tech space, and it blew up a lot randomly. And we sort of turned it into a SaaS model where we started white labeling that social network and selling it to universities. We got 2 LOIs, and before we actually shipped it, people wanted to buy it, and we kind of wanted the money, and so we just took it and then started building this.
So you guys have your own capital in this?
Yeah, well, it didn't take too much to start,
Sure.
and then the revenue keeps funding it.
Got it. Got it. Very helpful. I'll come back to I have some questions about your customers.
I have 2 questions, and then I might have a third one a little bit later. But I guess I'm curious if you could expand a little bit more on the moat. You kind of said data, and you were moving pretty fast at the time. Would love to hear more about that. And then secondly, I'm also curious is in terms of like your personal motivation is for solving this particular problem. And so, yeah.
Yeah, those are both really good questions. I'll let Armand answer the second question. I'll answer the first. In terms of the moat around like technology and data, I really wish Landon, our 4th co-founder, he got COVID, couldn't be here, could answer it. He's our chief technology officer, but I'll give you a brief overview. A lot of apps, just generally in e-commerce, they take a lot of very custom integration. So, if you think about like storefronts, they have very complex setups. They're all very different. And so trying to integrate, let's say something like an order tracking app or a pre-purchase upsell app into a store and trying to recognize where the add to cart button is, they do them in like a very old way, just in terms of the way the technology is built. The way we do it is very algorithmically. We've tried to like just make sure that everything is integrated before, and so we don't take an approach of let's try and create a database of all of the CSS selectors that all of the add to cart buttons have. It's more about let's write an algorithm using computer vision that can identify where the add to cart button is, and then let's target that. And so there's a lot of those things that we do, and then the other is just trying to have a shared data model across all of the apps, informing all of the decisions and all of the feature development that happens across all of the apps. And so that's why we're able to churn out more innovative features across all of our apps. And I'd be happy to give more examples as well. Second part.
Yeah, and in terms of the second question, I guess the initial like pain point came from like the previous business I started, which was like an e-commerce business. So I was able to scale that up to around like $2 million in revenue, but obviously that was not all profit, and it was very challenging to maintain a profitable operation, and the business eventually just failed and shut down. So it kind of arises from that like initial pain point I experienced myself running an e-commerce business, and I wanted to end up creating tools that kind of enable more profitable commerce. So yeah, I guess that's kind of where the initial idea and pain point arise.
Following up on that, Drew, I'm curious, it sounds like trade secret is your intellectual property strategy for right now?
I think there's 2 trade secrets. One is our growth strategy. So some of the ways we get our Shopify app reviews, they're fully legal and we don't do anything wrong, but they end up like we're very good at talking to customers, and then like we have like very interesting ways of sparking really positive conversations with our customers. And so that's one thing that very few apps in general, both in e-commerce apps and generally even on the App Store, have a very hard time replicating. And then yeah, the second is sort of like data algorithms that we do have.
Is there any plan for GUIs or utility patents or protecting the brand? Just curious, following up on a question around the moat.
By GUI, do you mean like graphical user interface? Yeah, so all of our apps have GUIs. Is that sort of your question?
Well, there's obviously intellectual property around that, so I'm curious if you plan to have a strategy to protect the IP of your GUIs at least.
Yeah. If I'm being completely honest, we haven't thought of that.
Be completely honest.
Yeah. So that is not that is not something we've gone down and thought about. I think it's very easy to replicate UIs and things like that, and so I think some of the deeper things there are like trying to have design patterns that where people don't have to write code to set up an app, right? That's like a standard that I don't think should be there. Like e-commerce merchants shouldn't have to write code. They should focus on building their store. And so those are the things that we do that I think can maybe constitute around our like intellectual property / moat. We haven't thought too much about turning our UIs and things like that into IP, although they are very beautiful and I hold very close to my heart. We have not thought about turning that into IP.
I'll just do a couple kind of rapid fire questions. So 3% appointment rate, but 50% booking rate. Who's closing that?
It's very easy to get people to switch.
And so how do you feel about training a team of salespeople to repeat what you're doing?
We're trying to do that now. This money would actually help a lot with that. One of the things that is very core to that is like trying to build out unified billing systems. It'd be much more effective to get the sales team to like do it with a unified billing system where they're selling a suite instead of a singular app. And so that's sort of where we want to go for sure.
Okay, and in the slides we talked about, there was a line that said competitor or competitors. How many other apps in the Shopify App Store are potential competitors?
Like there's 7,000 apps on the Shopify App Store. Obviously, they don't all compete with everything we do.
Absolutely.
I would say, like, there's like competitors that we fear in each category, and then there's like the competitors with their own suites. Usually, the competitors in each category are not building the suite. There's some that are. I'd say like around 10-ish competitors. Like those are not all like competitive, but there's probably like 2 or 3 per category that I think we like are keeping a close eye on and making sure we're staying ahead of them.
And you're bringing in about, what you said, $85,000 in monthly recurring revenue. What does that look like as far as transactions for the 6,000 stores?
Yeah, so do you mean in like terms of total revenue generated?
Total revenue.
Yeah, so $35 million was that number of like how much we've generated.
So that was a 35 million plus. That's how much additionally they were making with AfterSell.
Yeah, well, across all of our apps, right? Because all of the apps still help generate more revenue. So we have pre-purchase upselling or like cart upselling. And
which goes to my next question. So you've got a few apps in the suite. Of the 85, how is the pie broken up amongst the apps?
Yeah, so it'll all be AfterSell. This was sort of.
It's currently all in AfterSell.
Exactly. So that's the idea. Is like right now we've focused a lot on feature development on all of the other apps, and it's led to like just not building billing systems for these. And so we literally turn all of our revenue into like more feature development, more app development for a long time. And so we really need to build out the billing systems, and then, like I said, the unified billing system, which is we want to be very thoughtful about it, just sort of continuing on in like the unified data models across all of the apps, et cetera. Having the unified billing system is also very important to us. And so when we build the billing for each of these apps, we want to make sure that's all done together. So right now it's just AfterSell. And then by Q3, we'll go to all of them.
All right, and if we've got more time, I've got more.
So I wanted to go back to the sort of you're tracking category lead or sort of single category competitors and then multi-category competitors. For those sort of 10 folks who you're focused on, could you give us a sense of where you think you rank in terms of customer traction, MRR, and those sorts of things? And I was curious that your long term was like in 2023, which I thought was super interesting on one of your slides. So like longer than that though, what do you think drives the actual sort of category winner take all sort of business?
Yeah, so like, okay, just to answer the numbers part of this, like, for example, AfterSell, how much does Reconvert have? Like 20K?
They have 20, 30K merchants.
20 to 30K merchants.
Yes. So I guess like AfterSell has 2 or 3 main competitors. I would say like the biggest one has around 20 to 30K like active users and around like 200 to 300,000 in monthly recurring revenue.
Yeah, and so if you look at those guys, like we're trying to steal merchants from them. And I think on top of that, obviously getting the new merchants that are coming into the market. And then to answer the second part of your question of what does it look like even longer and how do we take all of these categories?
Yeah, who wins? Who wins and why?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons we would win, and I'm just going to default to saying we win, is like one of those things is like we're trying to build this in a very strategic. Like Reconvert is an app that sort of it grew really quickly, and then now it's sort of difficult for them to keep growing. They're not building a suite, and so there's very few reasons for people to keep installing them and switch over. But also, like, we have the AfterSell network, for example, which is an entirely new revenue stream. If someone is doing 10,000 orders a month, they can make $10,000 a month in additional profit using just the AfterSell network on top of any upsell revenue they make. And so there's all these like interesting things that I think we can offer across our apps that fewer players have the access to offer.
So, and just a quick follow-up on that. You had the Capital One example. Is that actually an AfterSell network partner?
Yeah.
And how many of those partners exist?
Right now, Capital One is our only partner, and they are our like pilot/test partner. And that's where we're getting the conversion rate numbers from and all of that to try and figure out. And then we're super interested in testing with newer partners, newer advertisers. So we're trying to go after some of the other ones. Like we really want Disney. I think it would be a really cool lead gen service for them and things like that. So we're going to go after them.
How does the partner model work from a revenue? How does that share? How are you modeling that?
Yeah, for sure. So it's a cost per conversion model, and we're still testing this. So we might turn it into a cost per click, cost per impression. But right now we charge the partner a cost per conversion. It's really easy for us to do that because it tells them that we have skin in the game. And then we're taking that, and then we're giving a cut to a merchant, and then we're taking the cut, a partial cut ourselves, right? And so just for the Capital One example, we're giving the merchant 10, we're keeping 20. And we can change that around based on the conversion rates and where it goes for it to be worth it for the merchant.
And have you had much churn? Anybody left the platform?
Like, it's an optional thing. Like, merchants don't have to run the after-sale network, so it's like, it's additional revenue for the types of merchants that want to run it, and some enterprise stores do. Like, this is a reward. It's like, hey, get cash back and rewards on when you shop online. And so some merchants will do it. Like, people churn. Like, we don't have a 0% churn rate, but like, I don't think the after-sale network is the reason they churn, because it's an optional thing.
Yeah, you just look at like net churn, like you have a land and expand strategy, it sounds like. So net churn, I would imagine, is positive, but I'm just trying to understand, of those 3,000, is it 3,000?
After-sale is 3,100. Across the suite, we have 6,000.
Yeah, Are you losing how many a month that are no longer active, just roughly?
Yeah, so I think it's like around 5% churn rate month
On
over
the
month.
logos?
Yeah, logo churn.
Thank you.
And 20% growth rate.
Got it.
But that isn't across necessarily all like paying users, since we do have like a freemium model. So some of those merchants that are churning are just like either smaller merchants, or it's like Shopify side churn, like the store closes down. We can't really control that side of things necessarily.
What's your customer acquisition cost?
Yeah, so most of our customer acquisition is through that organic App Store channel, but across our paid channels, our blended cost per install is around 28.77.
Around?
Like,
exactly.
Like, I think this is the last 30 days, based on all of the channels we use.
And that's with the one app in the one environment being Shopify, correct?
Exactly, for after sale. That's for other apps who are not running any paid acquisition, those are all organic. After sale is the only one we're running.
Yeah, so my general impression is you've got too many apps and too many channels. Like, it feels a bit like a scattergram. It's the go-to-market scattergram. So why not just focus on the one app that's up and running and owning the marketplace?
Yeah, that's 100% a good concern. And let me start that. So I think one of the biggest strategies is these other apps end up being growth channels for after sale. So that's number one. A lot of our traffic to after sale comes from our other apps. Number two is, that was what I was saying about Reconvert and them not being able to fully continue growing. Like, you can tap out a market very easily. I don't think we're there yet, and we're not close to doing that. But just long tail, it's like there's a lot. Like, we have a lot of customers coming in every single day, and we're able to sell them more and more every single day, and get them to grow their store more and more every single day, without losing, I think, focus, but also without like. All of the apps together end up having a higher value proposition than a single app. And I think that's where we want to go. Like, I think it's a decision for like the vision that we want to have for this company.
Yeah, so if you were making relevant upsells, you would lose less people, right? Like, if I don't like Capital One as a brand, and you're hitting me with a Capital One spam in the middle of my transaction, A, I won't click on the Capital One offer, and B, I might get a little pissed off at the vendor that's now spamming me with a Capital One offer. 100%. So where's the relevancy or personalization based on the transaction that just happened?
Yeah, so like the Capital One, I just want to go back to one of the slides that we had of like, this is a long slide deck.
And don't worry, they were a client of mine. I'm not anti-Capital One. But.
No, yeah, that's completely fair. But there's two types of offers that you can do using after-sale, right? The one is like of your own store, highly personalized, like you show them like, you just bought shoes, do you want this pair of socks kind of offers? And those are like highly relevant, highly personalized. The second is the partner network ads, and these are opt-in by the merchant. I want to stress that because it's a very choice-based thing of like merchants that think their customers would align with this like model, right? And that's why we want to build out a larger pool of partners. Like, this is not, like, the EpiSLS network is like just getting started. It's something we want to expand. We're going to build out more partnerships. We're going to have other brands that can be more relevant, that will be like rewarding. It'll be like get X free meals on HelloFresh because you just shopped online. And these don't show up in the middle of your purchase journey. We only show all of this like at the end because they're rewards. Like, you just purchased and you're getting rewarded now.
Do you guys have other questions? Because I've got a few. You go ahead.
So what are you learning from your customers?
Yeah, there's a lot. So I think there's
That maybe got you to adding more apps?
Sure.
Either
yes.
one. Answer it how you'd like.
For sure, yeah. So I'll take the adding more apps concept of, like, people want to not install like 1,000 apps, and so it's either that you build make a way worse user experience because you have all of these features integrated into one app, or you build a unified suite of apps that feel like it's one app, but it's actually different apps. And so that's one of the reasons, for example, why we built a pre-purchase upsell app, because people are like, hey, we love your post-purchase upselling solution. And then we sort of built the pre-purchase upselling to see, like, hey, do you want to try it? Similar to order tracking. Like, these are all very connected pieces of the e-commerce journey, right? Order tracking is right after the purchase, just like post-purchase upselling is. And so now there's a new feature that we can do is, like, on the order confirmation page, let's add an order tracking widget. The only widget you can use is from our order tracking app, Trackaroo. And so boom, you're going to install Trackaroo. And you love the experience because it's like very well integrated, it's very well connected, it's gonna work, and you have trust in the app yourself to make Trackaroo work.
You mentioned expanding beyond Shopify. I mean, what is your average customer, like, what do they look like size-wise? And you mentioned going to enterprise with Magenta and maybe some others. Where do you see that going to, and how will that increase your average service ticket?
Yeah, so I guess as like a total, like as a number, like of that 6,000 customers, the majority of those are like SMBs. But as like a revenue split, I would say half is like those larger stores, for example, like Feastables, like the new brand that Mr. Beast recently launched. And then, yeah, the other half is SMBs, whereas the other half is those more large-scale direct-to-consumer brands.
But as you expand, what kind of, like, where can this go? Where do you see where somebody doesn't have this ability within their own POS system, and how are you adding to that? At what level is that size customer, and have you identified that, like with Magento, or had any conversations like that?
Yeah, so Magento houses most of those like larger merchants, and so there's the Walmarts of the world, right? And then there's D2C brands like Feastables. We're going after the D2C brands. Those are like, natively born online. They're literally like direct to consumer. That's all they do is they do online. And so those brands, they love like just using a bunch of different tools, piecing it together, and then having a really good store. So Feastables, we have another customer of ours is Good American by Khloe Kardashian. And so these sort of brands have sort of started showing us how to move upmarket, right? Like we recently closed like Good American. We have like Chamberlain Coffee by Emma Chamberlain. We had HarperCollins Publishers, right? Those are sort of how we're learning to move upmarket.
We're going to do this last one.
So, could you go to the team slide real quick?
Yeah, of course.
So you all are in college and have already sold a business and closed a business, and they're not raising money, and there's no plans necessarily beyond 2023 for the long term. I'm just trying to get a feel for at what point, who's going to be doing this full time, and how are you thinking about what is the future?
Yeah, we all graduate like this. Well, he graduates and Len graduates this semester, and then Vern and I are done in like next May. From there, like the long term is to expand onto other platforms. Investment is after we take our apps paid. So investment is more short/medium term. More platforms is long term. The really long term is going and building like APIs and SDKs so people can integrate into custom cards. They don't need to be on a platform. And the ones that are on the platform, we're really able to scale up into that would be the long term. Is like we can really scale up market. The upmarket side, as we've seen, like Armand said, is like half of our customers, like half of our revenue. If we're able to, but they don't make up half the customer pool, right? And so moving upmarket is sort of the middle long term, and then the really long term is getting to the point where we're on all platforms with APIs and SDKs that we ourselves are dishing out. So, yeah.
Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you so much for the question.
KLAW Industries from SUNY Binghamton. Welcome to the finals of the Heartland Challenge. As you know, you have 15 minutes for your investment pitch. It'll be followed by 20 minutes of intense Q&A, guaranteed, by our expert judges. And judges, if you don't mind introducing yourselves once again, I know that these gentlemen would love to hear about your background. So MK, over to you.
Thank you, Sarah. Good afternoon, gentlemen. I'm MK Marsden. I've been judging this since the 80s. And have to say that the quality of the presentations and the quality of the business plans keeps getting better every year, so congratulations. We're delighted to have you here. I'm a computer scientist. I've done 8 startups. I invest in mostly tech companies working in blockchain, cryptocurrency, and NFTs right now. And then I have the opportunity of working with these people to judge your competition today. So welcome.
Chidozie Ogwumba, I'm the managing partner of Symbiosis. We are a Bentonville-based multi-stage venture fund focused on investments in advanced and emerging therapeutics. So cell therapy, gene editing, RNA, the microbiome, and other modalities as applied to serious and life-threatening disease.
I'm Clete Brewer. I'm based here in Rogers, Arkansas. I'm the managing partner of New Road Capital Partners. We do supply chain investing as well as consumer products.
Hi, Candace Matthews-Breckeen, General Partner of Lightship Capital. We invest in remarkable founders throughout the Heartland. We invest in e-commerce, CPG, sustainability, artificial intelligence, and healthcare out of Cincinnati, Ohio.
Hi, I'm Angela Grayson, Principal and Founder of Precipice IP. We are a science and technology law boutique. We help science and technology startups protect their products, brands, designs, and data.
Hi, I'm Michael Bosch, managing partner of Atento Capital, based in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We are a pre-seed and seed investor primarily, where we lead generalists, and then we do venture fund investing in Series A and Series B, where we don't lead. Thanks.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, gentlemen, the floor is yours.
All right. So hi, my name is Jacob Kumpon from KLAW Industries, and this is Nick Walling, and we are fundamentally changing the recycling industry. So there's a secret in recycling, and it's that it doesn't work. For the past 40 years, waste companies have been landfilling all the glass that we place into our recycling bin. That's right, all those wine bottles you tossed into your recycling bin never made it to new bottles, just down the street, right to your landfill. And this isn't because the waste companies are evil. In fact, this is costing them over $200,000 every single year at each one of their facilities. It's because the glass is mixed with a bunch of paper, plastic, and metal, making it unusable for new bottles or anything else. In the US, we landfill 8.3 million tons of this glass every year. That's almost all the glass that we produce. At KLAW Industries, our mission is to eliminate all of this waste glass. We're the first company to connect the recycling and the concrete industry to lead the deployment of sustainable materials in the next wave of new infrastructure. So concrete, like you'd see in a sidewalk, is made of gravel, sand, cement, and water. The cement and water react. That's the glue that holds the concrete together. Now, cement is by far the most expensive material in concrete. It makes up 75% of the material cost. In addition to this, for every ton of cement produced, 1 ton of CO2 is released into the atmosphere, making it one of the most polluted materials on the planet. At KLAW Industries, we are paid by recycling facilities to take this waste glass. We put it through our patent pending process and create Pantheon. And Pantheon is a partial replacement for cement and concrete. For recycling facilities, we offer a lower cost alternative than the landfill and ensure that the glass is actually recycled. After putting it through our process, Pantheon makes concrete stronger, lower cost, and lowers the carbon impact. Now, the core value proposition of Pantheon is that it increases the compressive strength of concrete by 11%. In addition to this, we beat the price of alternative materials by 25%. That is a huge decrease for the high-volume concrete industry. So far, we have validated this in over 20 concrete projects, and I wanted to talk about a couple of these. This was a residential sidewalk we completed with Tim Rufo from Barney & Dickinson in Binghamton, New York. A customer called Tim asking for a high-performance sidewalk. Tim decided to use Pantheon to increase the compressive strength of the concrete, and this became the first commercial application of Pantheon in the field. Another project was with Jamie Caddy from Upstone Materials and Clarkson University. Clarkson was expanding their biking infrastructure with a low embodied carbon bike path. Jamie used Pantheon to align with Clarkson's sustainability goals and submit a competitive bid. Now, this traction has allowed us to raise $502,000 in non-dilutive funding, including an SBIR with the EPA. Using this money, we purchased a production facility in Binghamton to scale our process, and we received the first delivery of waste glass at our facility back in September from Shalene Taylor at Southern Tier Recyclers, who paid us $35 per ton to take her waste glass. We've also received a letter of intent from Tim Rufo for 25 tons of Pantheon per month starting this April. Now, Tim decided to make the switch to Pantheon to provide a higher quality concrete product to his customers and save money on his materials. Now, you may be asking, why would somebody like Tim switch to a new material? Haven't they been making concrete the same way forever? Well, in the 1940s, the concrete industry began using fly ash from coal power plants and slag from steel foundries to replace cement and concrete. However, as I'm sure you're aware, these industries are quickly dying, leading to shortages and price increases of 16% each year in the concrete industry. To put this problem into perspective, this is a map of coal, fly ash, and slag suppliers in the Northeast. As you can see, there's only one in New York State. Compare that to the 57 recycling facilities paying high landfill tipping fees on their waste glass. This void in the market has left a $12 billion global opportunity that is only growing as we move off of coal power. Our service addressable market in the US is $1.3 billion, and our service obtainable market in New York, where we're starting, is 26. Now, we operate a high volume business, so we service a small logistical area. On the recycling side, we work with operations directors at recycling facilities in New York that process 2,000 tons of waste glass each year, like Shalene Taylor at Southern Tier Recyclers, who was hit the hardest by high landfill tipping fees. On the concrete side, we work with mixed directors at ready-mix concrete plants in New York that use 3,000 tons of cement replacements each year, like Tim Rufo from Barney & Dickinson, who is the first to be cut off when fly ash and slag shortages occur. Now, I want to make it clear where Pantheon sits in the value chain. We sell Pantheon as a raw material to mixed directors like Tim. Tim determines what materials are used in concrete and what mixes go to which projects. Tim then sells concrete to different end users for concrete pads and garage floors. Now, our competitive advantage is our patent-pending process to remove contamination from waste glass. Specifically, we pull out all that paper, plastic, and metal and use the glass to make Pantheon. Now, why is that important? Well, our competitors who make a clean glass cement replacement include Urban Mining Northeast and Tricentrix. Our ability to use waste glass provides us with two things. One, we receive payment for our raw material, while our competitors have to purchase expensive clean glass. And second, we are able to leverage an 8.3 million ton per year stable supply chain to keep pace with mixed directors' intense material use, where our competitors are limited in the amount of clean glass that they can purchase. Now, to protect this advantage, we filed a non-provisional patent back in 2021, and I want to make it clear how our process works. We receive waste glass at our facility. We then remove the contamination. That's what we are patent pending on. We now have clean glass. We then reduce the size using some processes from the mining industry that we keep as a trade secret, and then we have Pantheon that we sell into concrete. Now, I want to touch on the sustainability aspect of what we're doing here. For every ton of cement produced, 1 ton of CO2 is released into the atmosphere. Cement production accounts for 8% of global CO2 emissions. That is 4 times higher than the entire aviation industry. You've probably heard of battery-powered planes or high-efficiency jet fuels, but nobody ever talks about how the runway is 4 times worse for the environment than the plane itself. Pantheon replaces that high-carbon cement in the concrete. By 2050, we can prevent 10.8 gigatons of CO2. This caught the attention of the New York State Pollution Prevention Institute. They completed a case study last summer that showed Pantheon reduces the embodied carbon of concrete by 60 kilograms per cubic yard. So what does this magic environmental number actually mean in the real world? What means in all of those projects that we have completed so far, we've prevented 3,200 kilograms of CO2. At a US level, we can prevent 8.1 million tons of CO2 every single year, and by 2050, at a global stage, we can prevent that 10.8 gigatons. Now here are our unit economics on a per ton basis. We receive waste glass for $35 per ton. We then process it today at our facility in Binghamton with a cost of goods sold of $81. We add an additional $29 for logistics, and we sell Pantheon for $140. This leaves us with a profit of $65. This is our financial outlook to 2024, and as you can see, the dual revenue nature of this business model provides us high revenue in the early years. However, we are a capital-intensive business. We plan to reinvest this money back into the company to continue to grow. Now, a common concern with KLAW Industries is how will we scale this, especially as more competitors enter the market and recyclers stop paying us to take waste glass. We've devised a three-phase strategy to overcome this. Phase one is our facility in Binghamton, which will produce 2,000 tons of Pantheon each year. This will prove our initial business model, and the great part about this facility is that it's already funded. From there, we will scale to New York City, Philadelphia, and Boston, building facilities in these cities. We will locate next to recyclers to reduce our logistics costs, and this will prove that mixed directors will uptake a new material in these regions. This will allow us to begin licensing this technology directly to recyclers starting in 2025. This will allow us to rapidly expand across the US, limiting our capital expenses and moving our revenue model off of waste glass payment and onto recurring licensing fees. To bring Pantheon to market, we have completed those 20 concrete projects and have purchased our production facility. We will send the first truck of Pantheon out this April to Tim. After that, we will begin expanding to New York City, and in May of 2024, we will open up our operations in Boston to penetrate 45% of our service obtainable market. So how did all this start? Back in 2019, I was touring our local recycling facility with my co-founder, Jack. I learned that all the glass we had been placing in the recycling bin was just going right to our landfill. And this problem stuck with me, because I come from a rural town not too far from our landfill. And landfill encroachment is a real problem in my hometown, as well as many other communities across the US, and it's not being addressed. Jack is our CEO, leading the deployment of Pantheon into the market. Last December, he quit his job at BAE Systems to do this full time, using his experience at LC Drives, a startup that makes high-efficiency motors. I am our COO, leading our process development, using my experience at CMP Advanced Mechanical Solutions, working on Tesla and Amazon projects. In this past summer, we brought Nick Walling on as our Chief Automation Officer for his experience with AWS and Microsoft Azure to help us scale our process. So there's a lot of talk in entrepreneurship about grit and passion on your team, but what does that actually mean? At KLAW Industries, it means that Jack is back in Binghamton doing everything he can to fill that trailer for Tim. It means that we bet all of our funding, every last penny we had, on a production facility to prove our business model. And it means that I have $122 in my personal bank account, and it's the most comfortable that I've ever been. So why are we the best team to lead Pantheon into the market? It's because we're the ones already doing it. And I'll now pass it to Nick.
We are fundamentally changing recycling. It is extremely difficult to build what we have built, and would not have been possible without the passion of both our team and our team of advisors, which consists of concrete experts, business strategists, and grant funders. With our experience in creating sustainable concrete, scaling businesses, and overcoming regulatory hurdles, we position ourselves to continue our revolution of the concrete and recycling industries. We are seeking a $1.1 million investment in the form of a SAFE agreement. With this investment, we will outfit a new production facility in New York City. Specifically, we will be purchasing and building equipment that traditional lenders will not finance. By building this second production facility, we will validate the scalability of our process, enabling us to begin licensing out our technology in the year 2025.
Within 12 years, we will be acquired by one of the large cement companies such as Cemex or Lehigh Hanson. Notable sales of cement replacement companies include the sale of Boral Materials last year for $755 million. Cement replacement companies are typically acquired at 7 to 10 times EBITDA, placing us in a strong position as fly ash and slag dry up across the US. Now, how will the Heartland Challenge Prize help us? Well, it will allow us to secure our second mixed reactor customer, Eric Winter from DA Collins. Eric has done testing with Pantheon and wants to use it at his facility. However, he doesn't own the logistics equipment to get it from our plant to his, and third parties won't work with either of us because this is such a low volume deal. To get around this, we are purchasing our own truck and trailer to get Pantheon to Eric and get our second customer. I am already signed up for CEO classes, and a section of this funding has already been secured from Clarkson University. And since the Heartland Challenge will make the difference for KLAW Industries, we will paint the Heartland Challenge right on the side of it. And that is why we are up here in steel toes, jeans, and sweatshirts. Because if we're actually going to clean up our act and get waste glass out of our landfills, we're going to have to get down and get our hands dirty. Thank you. Go, boss.
Amazing.
Jacob and Nick, what a great presentation. I just loved it.
Thank you.
So many questions. So, a very benign question. Tell me what KLAW means.
That is an acronym for the original founders' last names. We couldn't really think of a cool idea, but we work in waste and concrete, so everybody just calls it their last names. So we figured we'd stick with the crowd.
All right, that works. Okay, so you talked about your intellectual property a little bit, and I was really delighted to hear that you have a non-provisional patent filed. One thing I'm not clear about is it sounds like you have a material that has some very interesting properties, but you chose to focus on a process patent. Can you talk about that?
Yes, so the use as glass as a cement replacement in concrete is not an entirely novel idea. It's been done in the lab for about 20 years. Nobody's been able to commercialize it because it's been too expensive. That's why we focused our IP on our actual contamination removal step that allows us to get payment for the raw material and actually use enough glass to keep pace with concrete.
So when you talk about the licensing model, what will you be licensing? The process for the cleanup of the glass or the process for making the material?
Both. We plan to license the cleanup section right to the recycling facility, and on the back end of that, we'll be actually making the material. That way they can sell it right into the concrete industry. And that's one of the reasons why we're building those 3 facilities in those bigger cities, is we want to validate that and prove that process out so we could show companies like Waste Management what they're going to be putting in their facilities.
Okay. Thank you.
Will your competitors be able to buy that clean glass coming out of the recycling facility if you've licensed that?
That is correct. That is another model that we have considered, is actually cleaning up the glass for our competitors and basically white labeling the clean glass.
So, really great presentation. A couple of questions. You didn't talk to us very much about how the current clean glass industry works. In other words, what are the dimensions of other processes that are currently used that folks are buying from, and why aren't those folks able to scale?
So basically, clean glass is used in a post-industrial setting. So like if you're manufacturing new bottles, you can reuse the glass wasted from that. Once it gets into the post-consumer realm, glass just isn't recycled because there's not a process to do it like that we have developed. This has been a stagnant problem in the recycling industry for over 40 years, and they haven't been able to solve it.
So if I understand you correctly, when your competitors who are replacing concrete with glass are buying it, they're basically buying broken glass from the production line that's never actually been used.
That's correct. They're paying about $45 per ton for it.
So that's a very important distinction because it goes to sort of the uniqueness of what you all are doing. Mm-hmm. Just another question. You had the chart up there that showed compression strength based on curing time.
That's correct.
Can you help me understand what the implications of that are for the sorts of projects that can and can't use your glass?
Yes.
Or your product?
That's a great question. So for almost all concrete projects, compressive strength is measured on a 28-day cure time. That's a standard in the concrete industry. So we're 11% stronger at 28 days. We're focused on mainly residential and structural work for things like house foundations, sidewalks, and driveways. Now, early strength, you can see we dropped below slag. That's not great for like huge high-rise buildings. So that's not really a market that we're targeting. We're targeting more residential work, the bread and butter of smaller concrete facilities.
So, and I'm guessing not targeting high rises because essentially they want it to cure much faster so they can run that project.
Exactly.
Okay.
Their whole thing is they want to put more floors on top of it,
Got
but
it.
for all other concrete projects,
Got
you're
it.
usually hitting 75% of the strength at 7 days,
And just
which we do.
a couple more, if I might. Can you talk about, you mentioned that traditional lenders won't finance the sort of stuff that you're looking for, but there are all sorts of alternative capital sources out there. For example, financing your equipment, I would think would be a great sort of program-related investment for a nonprofit that has an environmental driver, right? You could be able to show, and you could actually get really even lower cost capital than the SAFE you're proposing to raise. Could you talk about how you think about sort of non-traditional capital sources given what you're trying to do?
Yeah, so for a lot of equipment that exists that we can leverage, like conveyor belts, long-term trucks, things like that, we want to use the traditional form of capital, specifically IDA loans, industrial development loans. But really, with the SAFE agreement, what we're trying to find is a strategic investor. As you can see, we're a young team. We have a great board of advisors, but we want to bring somebody on that's going to be a long-term partner with us that can help to connect us into the concrete industry. That's really why we've started to look down the investment road. We think there's additional value there that we won't get with traditional lenders.
Okay, and the last thing from me, have you thought about capturing sort of carbon credits and other revenue streams that may be sort of inherent to what you're doing?
That's a great question. Yes, we have. In New York, this is still kind of up in the air. So as carbon credits become more regulated, this is a great opportunity for us. Specifically, the concrete plants will get the carbon credits since they're the ones preventing the CO2. What this allows us to do is basically undercut our competitors by an insane amount. Let's say a carbon credit's worth $20, we could charge $20 more for our product since they're getting a credit. So that's something we're looking into as that becomes more formulated and solid.
Thank you.
So there's also an incentive to use our product because you can get lead credit points from that. So that's another thing to mention too.
So thanks for showing us a balance sheet. It's nice to see some numbers.
Yes.
So how are you acquiring your customers? How do you find the Tims and the other people? You seem to be going into the smaller guys maybe right now, and you have to buy a truck to get the product back and forth. What's the customer acquisition strategy?
Yep. Can you flip to the sales funnel side? Yep. So we do this, basically this is our strategy so far.
Okay.
We go to trade shows, is the big one, since there's not a whole lot of people that work in the concrete industry, it's a small pool. We go to these trade shows, meet people in the concrete industry like Tim. From there, we go and we do pilot projects with them. People like Tim is a hands-on guy. He wants to see it work at his plant, using his aggregates, using his mixes. So we provide the material to do that. We perform the testing with him. From there, we start moving into like pilot projects that we're deploying into the field, like that residential sidewalk. And then from there, we do that full silo integration and actually begin delivering. So trade shows is the big thing that we're leveraging.
So you've got trade shows, and then you have to do a POC, a proof of concept.
Yes, that's correct.
And how long does your proof of concept take?
So typically, to get to the actual like results and then start doing some pilot projects, like start to finish here, we're looking at 4 to 6 months.
Okay. And what is it that they're looking for in the proof of concept? Is it curing time? Is it cracking? Like how do you measure good concrete versus not so great concrete?
Compressive strength. That's the big thing they're looking for. They want to see compressive strength, and do their customers notice anything different on the finish? Those are the two things.
Okay. And what's the impact of using crushed glass in concrete in weather?
This is something we're studying at Clarkson University. We have a $50,000 research grant going with them, specifically targeting chloride ion permeability. This is like salt spray and acid rain resistance. So that testing's ongoing. The results are good so far. We'll have them back in about 2 months.
Thank you.
Yeah, great presentation and Q&A so far. One thing before I ask my two questions, where you have a close relationship with Closed Loop Ventures. They're for circular economy. Do you know those guys?
Yeah, in New York.
Yeah.
Yep.
Have you spoken to them?
We have not spoken to them yet.
Okay, I'd be happy to get you in touch. They would be, I think, the right kind of people to talk to you about this. So, could you go to the business model or the unit economics slide?
Yep.
So I guess Where is it? I just want to make sure I understand. Unit economic. Yeah, this one. Okay, so there's $35 revenue on one side, and 100. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding how you got to the profit the total profit number. Could you take me through this?
Yes, I can. So we received $35 in revenue. That's for taking waste glass, right? So we have $35 in our bank account now. We then process it in our facility for $81 as our cost of goods sold, and the logistics on both sides of this cost $29. Those are our expenses. From there, we sell Pantheon for $140 per ton. That's an additional revenue stream. That leaves us with a profit of $65.
Got it. It's $175 in revenue and $110.
Yes.
And what is above and below the line in terms of labor? Like, this is just pure kind of COGS and logistics. So all the labor involved in managing this would be below the line on that margin?
Yes, but that's a big reason why we brought Nick on. As Chief Automating Officer, there's a lot of processes that we can automate, which we're trying to do quickly.
And what's the average customer value? So what's the revenue per customer on average?
Yep, so an average customer like Tim would use about 3,000 tons of this material every year. So on a yearly revenue basis, you're looking at about 350 to 400 grand per year.
Revenue or profit?
Revenue.
So
profit, you're looking at like 160,000 to 200,000. Roughly where we are right now.
And how much human labor on your side would be needed to manage that process?
Right now, today, a fair bit. But as I said, we're trying to bring that down, and that's changing quite a bit over this next summer. As you saw, we purchased our facility last year. We're still trying to scale it up.
Thank you.
Yep.
So my questions are more around, what are you learning from your pilot projects? And really also, what can go wrong in this very well thought out plan?
A lot. If you want, flip to project. So basically,
Do you want the project slide?
Yeah, go all the way back to the project slide if you don't mind. Yeah, so in these projects, really what we're looking for is two things. The mix director is looking for compressive strength and set time sometimes, but really what they want to see is what happens when they send it to their customers. Do their customers start to notice things different? Does it take them longer to get out there with their finishing tools? This is something that Tim really cared about. That's why we did, go back one.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll see there's a big pad on the left and then a big garage floor in the middle. He was testing out what happens when he just sends it to somebody and we don't say anything. That's what he was trying there. So tests like that, where it's not as much like hard numbers. We have the lab testing at Clarkson for the hard numbers, but Tim wants to see what happens when he sends it to his customers. That's the big thing we're trying there. Does that make sense?
It does. And over the next few years, what do you think those key inflection points are?
Basically making the jump to a big facility in New York City. I think it's going to be a huge leap for us. Basically, one, it's a much higher volume than what we're used to, and we're dealing with much higher capital. So that's really a big jumping point. And then when we begin to transition into licensing, basically the in between of those two phases, and how we're minimizing that as we want a strategic investor.
And so beyond the strategic investor, what are other ways that you can minimize any kind of difficulties that you will find with making that big leap?
Really, the biggest thing that we have found is we own our production facility outright. I know investors really don't like buying real estate, but something that we've seen is that has made us much more stable. Our outgoing expenses are super low right now. So we think that that's one way, and leveraging those other traditional financing sources is a way that we can use our capital basically better.
Awesome, thank you.
So your ongoing expenses are low right now, I'm assuming because you're not paying yourself?
Yes, that's
so
correct.
When you impute your wage, I think you've got a lot of expenses, but anyway.
Yes.
What your wage should be. So I just wanted to go back to some of the questions that were asked earlier. Can you help us understand how you think about the break-even on the CapEx per facility, and what you think this sort of efficient scale is for the size of your facilities? Because at $65 a ton, 2,000 tons, right, it's $130,000 on about $500,000 of expense before all the people.
Yeah.
So this is a really long dated from a CapEx, kind of perspective. So just wondering how you think about break-evens and proper scale.
Yep, so proper scale that we're targeting is 25,000 tons a year at one of these big facilities, including labor. We do have done those calculations, is roughly about 12,000 tons per year. At one of those big facilities, we'll break even. After that, the rest of the tons is where we actually start to make a decent amount of profit. That's why we're also targeting 3 cities. We want to go to New York City, Philadelphia, and Boston, because if we build one massive plant in New York City and for some reason the market doesn't take as fast as we think it does, we have 2 backups.
So there's a really important kind of regional concentration, given that it's a heavy material. You don't want to ship it too far.
Exactly. We have a relatively low value to weight ratio. We can only service customers within 300 miles of one of these facilities. That's another reason why we don't want to build huge ones.
Yep.
And just real quick, so per facility, what is the cost per facility, and then the profit on the per facility? So I just can understand the payback period.
Yes, so the profit on a 25,000 ton per year facility in New York is about 1.6 million. To upstart that facility, we're looking for 1.1 million in investment. With the financing, you're looking somewhere around close to 3.5 million total. So it's a pretty fast payback period, given that at this point, we're making money on both sides.
So that's one facility.
This is once we get into 2024, that's about one facility. Roughly.
Sorry, but you're assuming a 50% decline in the cost of the facility by capacity, right? Because if it cost you $500,000 to make it's linear. Is it $500,000 for a 2,000 ton facility and $3 million for a 25,000 ton facility, right? You're assuming there's some decline in cost.
There is some decline in cost. Basically, a lot of our machines don't scale linearly. For example, like processing equipment doesn't scale linearly from the mining side. So we do get better efficiencies on our cost of goods sold as well, and the actual cost of the equipment pieces themselves does not scale linearly.
So, but at worst, if it were linear, it'd be like a 6-year payback.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And how long is the process from when we get the dirty glass to when we get to Pantheon?
All in, you're looking at about 12 hours.
12
if you're looking for a time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Roughly.
I wanted to, sorry, go ahead, Clete.
I just have, so you've got this issue in the Northeast where they don't have the resources to buy so is that true in other markets in the U.S., or is New York Northeast kind of more stringently regulated, which is why the Tims, I'm not used to a customer being Tim, that kind of freaks me out a little bit, but the customer is needing you more there than maybe they would in Alabama or in Arkansas or Texas, where they may still have resources that
Yes, so
not being heavily regulated.
Basically, where we're going is where coal power plants are disappearing. So West Coast also has this problem, and most of the East Coast. Northeast is just hit the hardest. Now, basically, that's retreating into the Midwest as we continue to close more coal power plants. Because even if you don't open up renewable sources, if you switch to natural gas, you still don't have fly ash. So
Last question, that helps. Engineering specs?
Yep.
How do you get Pantheon stamped on commercial engineering specs, or is that an issue for you at all?
So basically how we're doing it right now is we want to deploy in those non-mission critical projects like the driveways and the house foundations. That way we can go to engineers and we actually say, hey, these are projects that are in the ground, they've been in the ground for a year or two, and it's much easier for them to make a jump on a material. Today, this is a great material, and we have some projects, but an engineering firm's not going to bet their reputation on it. Exactly. So that's why we're focused on the existing regulation. Something I will say that I wanted to cover, thank you for bringing up this slide, we have ASTM approval. There's an existing specification for using glass as a cement replacement in concrete. We got this back in 2020. So right now, we can be used in your house foundation as well as commercial projects. So.
I wanted to ask a question about the licensing model. Whenever I counsel clients around process patents, I'm always thinking, I want them to think about what is the telltale, right? Because a patent is only as good as your ability to enforce it, right? So have you thought about, and you don't necessarily need to tell us this, but have you thought about the telltale to determine infringement? Because let's say, for example, you license something to someone and your license is done, but they continue to use it. How will you know that they're infringing or someone else is infringing your process patent?
I mean, a big thing that, honestly, I don't know This is something that we're still trying to work on. But something I will say is that recycling facilities today don't have the capacity to clean up their glass. So that would be a pretty telltale sign.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you're still in prosecution, and there may be an opportunity for you to work with your IP attorney. But, you know, as someone who's done enforcement in-house at a chemical company, that's really something you definitely want to think about. The ability to take a GC mass or some other type of spectrometry to determine that someone is using your process. Because the process will be behind closed doors.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any more questions?
So the CEO's not here because he had COVID, is that right?
He is back in Binghamton trying to fill the truck for Tim because that's due at the end of the month.
So who normally does the pitches, you or the CEO?
I'm still a student, so I usually do the pitches. So we have the titles, but it is a startup, so we kind of do everything. Like before I flew here, we were like shoveling broken glass around, so that's kind of how we're doing it.
I got it. No, it's just you present very well, so that's.
Thank you.
And you gave us these things, but you didn't tell us what they were. So
Yeah,
this is
so
the
that's
Pantheon?
Yes, I was trying to hold these up. That's the glass that's currently going to the landfill, and then this is the actual Pantheon itself.
great.
So that's
So
just
we
kind
won't
of.
eat either.
Yes, please don't eat them.
I got it. I thought this was a benet. I was getting pretty excited.
Yeah, you could certainly try it if you want. But
Gentlemen, thank you both for your time.
thank you very much. Appreciate it.
CiphrX leverages a third-party sequencing device that fits in the palm of your hand and that I have here today. Our product consists of two components. The first is a sample preparation kit that contains proprietary patent-pending reagents and enables a lab technician to take a tumor biopsy from the operating room to extract, isolate the brain cancer-relevant portions of the DNA for immediate sequencing and analysis. You can think of the DNA as a library. You walk into a library, and you don't want to have to walk down every row in that library to find the book you're looking for. Instead, you might ask a librarian for the specific location of only one book within that library, saving on a lot of time. In the same way, the kit that we provide enables a lab to isolate only those portions of the DNA that are clinically relevant for diagnosing brain cancer. The second component is a software platform that analyzes the data and produces a user-friendly report to guide clinical decision-making. The kind of information that's included in this report is the genomic variant, as well as therapies that are available based on that genomic variant, as well as nearby clinical trials for rapid enrollment. And not only that, we are compiling an anonymized patient database that will drive future R&D development, meaning that the data that we collect will only improve with time.
Thanks, Landon. And to start, we're going to enter the underserved brain cancer market. We see a serviceable, obtainable market of just over $1 billion. Over the next 6 years, that's projected to increase at 16%. But really, the larger goal here is to develop some new IT based on that entry point, and then enter the larger, much larger $60 billion estimated market for precision global cancer care. And based on customer discovery, we really found out that the southern U.S. has there's a lot of large neurosurgery hospitals that have the resources to implement this technology and an appetite for it, given that there's a higher number of cancer cases to low income, making it a great area to target for positive impact on accessibility. And to start, we're going to build on our existing connection with the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences Department of Neurosurgery. And we'll develop clinical data there that we need to get FDA approval, and we'll use CLIA data to generate revenue until that time comes, and then we'll launch with our two products here that you see. First, like Landon mentioned, we have a business model with two parts. You have the software analytics, which is an annual subscription of $10,000, and then you have the lab kit that is fed into the sequencer device, which is $4,000 per sequence. And that's run every single time a biopsy is taken, and it's also in line with industry costs. But really the key here is by putting this in the hospital, it's going to become an advantage for the hospital. From customer discovery, we learned if they can use their technical resources for this, they can use it instead of a cost, charging it for insurance reimbursement. as a revenue stream. And then digging a little bit more into the business model, we're going to lean in on outsourced manufacturing to produce and package these, just that they'll have the inventory on hand to help us. And we see those costs roughly over $1,200, and that'll allow us to hit a 60% gross margin by 2026, which is in line with what we've seen in the Damodaran healthcare products industry averages. And then on the marketing front, we're going to lean on this team heavily to go out to trade shows, but most importantly, get our name out there in publications and earn media to connect with stakeholders. And we'll scale those efforts up as we approach product launch. And then from the sales standpoint, I want to mention, so we're going to start with a direct sales staff. We know that this is costly for a startup, but given the complexity of the problem and sensitivity of brain cancer, we want to make sure that we control that customer experience from start to finish. And that will also still enable us to have a positive lifetime value of CAC ratio 4.7. But long term, we are not naive. We know we'll have to seek those distribution partnerships to scale up growth. And then finally, on the logistics front, we got to get the product to the customer. Given that the kit has a rough, most of the product has a rough shelf life of 2 months, we're going to drop ship these items directly to hospitals in a just-in-time inventory fashion. And the reason being, we'll do that to save on inventory carrying costs and lean on our production partners for that, and keep everyone's inventory carrying costs low across the board. And then going into the financials, just want to point out here at the top, we did extensive market research around the cancer market, and we found, using PitchBook and other relevant data resources, that there's over 1,200 hospitals in the US with a neurosurgery unit, and there's roughly 238 sequences done per hospital per year. And just in the revenue model, wanted to point out the first 3 years, we're not projecting any revenue there. The main thing, we're going to build out our prototyping and then invest in new IP to build basically a patent fence so that we can try to go after that $60 billion market. And then by 2025, that's when we think we'll have enough clinical data to start charging revenue for this inside the hospitals, with plans to scale up, reaching FDA approval in 2029 and bringing in $34 million in revenue and roughly 4% market share.
These are our 5 major competitors, each of which is valued in the billions. Those are the same external sequencing companies. The clinicians and pathologists we talk to pick and choose a variety of these based on their genetic panel offerings and their proprietary bioinformatics. But we want to offer what these competitors cannot, which is a single diagnostic test offered in the hospital with results returned on the same day as the diagnostic surgery. Our competitive advantage consists of 4 parts. First, we have signed an option agreement to an exclusive license for the patent pending technology in that kit, which will protect us against those competitors. Second, we already have tumor sample access and patient consent to continue R&D development with UAMS. Third, we want to move fast and be the first entrants into the brain cancer market. And finally, our experienced team of business professionals and scientists work really cohesively together and are key to bringing this to market. Emily is a postdoctoral researcher with over 10 years of experience. She works directly with the inventor of the technology, and she's our subject matter expert, and she will focus on R&D strategy. Landon is a biomedical engineer with experience in gene editing technologies such as CRISPR, and will be in charge of regulatory strategy. Drake is a business professional with over 6 years of experience in large multinational companies and will be in charge of investor relations. Haley has experience with 3 years with a healthcare startup company and has seen it grow from the ground up, and so she will help us with company development. And I have my PhD in neuroscience. I'm an insights analyst at Walmart's Emerging Tech and will be in charge of product development. And we also have a board of advisors with scientific and clinical expertise, as well as corporate and regulatory expertise, who will help us bring this to market.
We recognize that we're operating within a highly regulated life sciences industry, and as such, we focus diligently on understanding our regulatory pathway, recognizing that this can potentially be one of our biggest challenges, especially in this industry. And to do that, we've hired and have already sought the support from regulatory consultants, which will be especially relevant as we even in the early stages and moving into our clinical validation. As far as our clinical validation goes, as part of our strategy, we want to move into a CLIA-certified laboratory. Now, CLIA is basically just the certifying body that governs all diagnostic laboratories conducting human testing. And so by moving into these laboratories, we can develop clinical data as we foresee needing to approach the FDA for approval, and will also be a source of additional revenue generation for us before approaching the FDA. Because we are a Class 3 device, we will submit a PMA application to the FDA in 2025, and having focused on this regulatory pathway from the very earliest stages of company development, we hope to mitigate any significant delays in this process.
To bring our product to market and reach our customer, we have defined milestone and investment strategy. The first phase will be the R&D phase 1. We will use to secure our IP and validate our prototype by scaling it up by testing more patients. The second phase will be the R&D phase 2, will be used to validate the prototype in a more regulating fashion with the CLIA certification and start to collect data for clinical trials. The next phase will be the demonstration of the technology. This is where we will start to sell and reach 18 hospitals CLIA certified to collect data for the PMA. And finally, with the large scale, we will sell to more than 45 hospitals in need of our product and expect an exit strategy for 2029. Our offering is $500,000 for 20% of equity. We have an experienced team ready to offer 51.9 times the ROI to our pre-seed investor. So please join us as we reshape the future of brain cancer diagnosis. Thank you very much.
Really appreciate the presentation. We have a number of companies that are looking at glioblastoma, and I think super excited about what the treatment options will be, but think you're correct that shortening the time to which somebody starts treatment is going to remain critical. Why does it take 2 to 6 weeks? And can you help us understand both the nature of the sequencing machine that you are using, whether it's currently in hospitals, and the particular markers you're looking for?
Sorry, I didn't hear the last part.
The particular markers you're looking for. So why does it take 2 to 6 weeks in the current paradigm, and can you talk about the nature of the sequencing machine and the reads and markers that you're looking for?
Okay. So right now, the sample has to be sent to external company. And the problem starts from that point, because the hospital need to do a lot of paperwork to send this sample. So it will take time for the pathologist to check the tumor, select the best part of the tumor, and send it to the external company. Then the external company need to optimize their cost. So what they're going to do, they're going to batch patient and put patient in line in a way that they collect enough to be able to sequence them and get the results. Then they're going to have to check the result with a very complex bioinformatic pipeline and bring a pathologist to confirm the result and send back the result to the hospital. In function of what you say, in function of the marker that are who need to be determined, brain cancer has very complex mutation. He has a group of 120 different brain cancer. So in function of the complexity of what they are looking for, it can take 2 to 6 weeks to obtain the result. Now, for the sequencer, I will let Landon answer to that question, because it's a specific sequencer who come on the market very recently, and this is where reducing the cost is interesting and move back from decentralized to centralized company.
Yeah, sure. So currently, the standard is these Illumina-based instruments that cost millions of dollars, and so that's really the justifying motive behind sending to these external companies. Most hospitals can't justify paying $1 million for an instrument. The instrument that we have is this kind of next generation approach. It's a nanopore-based technology that is far cheaper, far easier to implement into a hospital setting, which really justifies being able to bring this kind of technology into the hospital, decentralizing that process, and really giving power back to that hospital system.
So what's the penetration of the sequencer that would be necessary currently?
So our goal by the kit that we patent is to fit the sequencer in a way that we have isolate the marker we're interested in function of the tumor that we want to analyze. And the bioinformatic pipeline will start right away when the sequencer is doing the sequencing.
So yeah, I'm not sure my question was clear. That if your system depends upon a sequencer that's been newly introduced to the market, how many hospitals have that sequencer, and to what extent are you dependent on the rate at which hospitals acquire that sequencer?
So it's easy for hospital to acquire the sequencer. What is not easy is to put in place a kit to process the tumor and isolate the marker that you need. And what is even more complicated is the bioinformatic pipeline behind it. So you will need to hire, the sequencer is easy to obtain, but hire the people who can create the new kit for your system and generate the data coming from this sequencer is where the hospital cannot keep up. That's why when they moved to Illumina, first, they were not able to keep up because of the cost, but also because they need a lot of labor and in very skilled labor to run this sequencer. So when we did our interview discovery, a biomolecular biologist told us, I don't want someone to spend all day on one patient. I don't have the resources to do it.
And just a last thing from me, there was a slide where you had a little asterisk saying that the method had been published on. Can you talk about sort of the dimensions of sort of both the, how many samples, where were the samples sort of collected from? Can you give us some sense of the performance of your test from a sensitivity and specificity perspective?
For this clinical
Correct.
validation? So this clinical validation was done by getting samples from the OR, and the samples were frozen. It was not in real time. It was tested on 8 patients, and of course our specificity was 100% on 8 patients,
Of course.
which
Not
scientifically is not relevant.
Yeah.
So we will have, of course, to add more patients to know this specificity, but we haven't moved in development until to really understand what was the need of the customer. Because the design of the whole process will depend on these needs. And if you think it's just your customer, when we start to talk about FDA, they have also to mention what is your clinical research path that we can validate before you even think about development. So we know it's working, we are confident, we know it has other universities who has worked on it. Now we need to shape it in a way that the market will adopt it.
Sure. And then just the last thing from me, when you think about the amount of money that you're looking to raise, one of my concerns would be that it doesn't leave your company from a balance sheet perspective in a situation where you're robust enough to absorb an unexpected clinical result, right? You may run into an optimization step in terms of how the samples are collected and prepared. You may need to do other optimization sort of in terms of kind of having this kit in the hands of a hospital the person who's running the test having been directly trained by you or being one of your employees. How do you optimize between the size of capital you're looking to raise now and potentially a larger raise that allows your company to go through several iterations before having to come back to market?
So we asked for $500,000 because we making together the number, and maybe you can compare.
Yeah, no, I mean, we realize, it will take 10 to 20 million to get that FDA approval. I think we were conservative in our approach with some of the numbers, but to your point, yeah, you got to have room for error, and I think that's why during the first 3 years, we're also going to focus on developing new IP and building that fortress, so to speak, around it. And then Emily is working with a neurosurgeon at one of the top 10 neurosurgery medical colleges around the country. And so I think right there we have the resources, and already they're working with
the
patients.
advantage that we have is we have a strong partnership with UAMS, so we have access to patient tumor who has been preserved through different process, and we receive in the lab different type of fresh tumor. So we are extremely adaptable on what can happen and change and shift. Our key is really adaptability here. So we have enough room for $500,000. Now, if he failed, I don't know how to answer to that question.
You might look at running your bioinformatics, for example, against the Cancer Genome Atlas to get some sort of in silico validation.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Great presentation, guys. It's always really cool to see complicated science boiled down and described for everybody. So I think you did a great job there. One of the things I wanted to follow up on is kind of your IP strategy from the patent perspective. Just in broad strokes, right, we all know that research tools and diagnostic tools can be really difficult to get from the USPTO in terms of a patent. You talked about reagents, so can you talk to us a little bit about what your strategy is from a patent perspective? Are you looking for method claims? I mean, talk about why you think you might be able to get something that's, number one, you can get, and number two, that's enforceable.
Yeah, sure. So, just to summarize the patent itself, the patent that we have currently, it covers specifically, as you mentioned, the proprietary reagent that we're actually using to, enrich that specific DNA and then actually sequence it. And so that's, the core of that first patent has 23 claims. Right now, it's been nationalized here in the U.S. as well as Canada and Australia, and then, also, looking, other places abroad as well. But, as you said, and as we've all kind of said here, the ultimate strategy from an IP perspective is to, definitely broaden that portfolio as well to, capture other forms of cancer. Brain being the most obvious approach for us, like from the start, because of our existing collaboration through UAMS, we have access to the samples. We have access to world-class researchers who can support us in that and can ultimately vouch for the technology that we have. But as an initial proof of concept, we can move forward developing IP around other cancers as well.
I will just add, unfortunately for patients, but lucky for research, it has a lot of cancer who metastasize to the brain, and they also need to be identified, like melanoma, breast, colorectal, lung cancer. So we have also access to this secondary brain tumor, and we can start to develop some IP around it. It's true, it's a very close market for the other cancer because you have a lot of competition, and it's difficult for us to bring a new technology on this type of gold standard already established diagnosis. But we really want to have the IP with this technology and be prepared to move on the market with our IP on this different cancer.
Thank you.
First of all, really interesting presentation, and actually a good friend of mine passed away from brain cancer a few weeks ago and was just trying to kind of think through if this would have changed his circumstance, hopefully. But
Ouch. Sorry to hear that.
yeah. So one question, this is probably my own lack of knowledge in this space, but I just want to make sure I ask it, is I don't usually invest in this space at all. How do you make revenue without FDA approval?
You do it in the CLIA data realm. So that's where they have expertise. If you go through these clinical trials, you can start to generate revenue in a CLIA lab that's within a hospital space. So our goal is to bring this to hospitals that have a CLIA lab and start the first 3 years generating that data, and then starting to generate revenue as we approach that FDA approval in 2028, 29. But that CLIA data generation allows you to still charge revenue during that phase.
Great. And then a follow-up question, unrelated. Thank you for telling me that. I learned something new.
Me too.
So, really interesting team in different schools and departments, and some of you seem to have, day jobs plus executive MBAs plus this, and I applaud you for staying busy. But how does everyone know each other? Who's full time? $500,000 isn't that much money for you all plus anyone else to go for a few years. What is the dynamic? And just because most startups break up because of the team, and so just trying to understand that a little better.
You want to take that?
Well, Emily's at UAMS. Emily is at UAMS, and she's really, driving this because she works directly with the inventor, and in the research, she sees it like day in and day out. So she's like our shining star, and we all flocked to her. But we all met through the class, and me and Drake and Haley all work at companies, and then Landon just got a job, so he's a working man now. And so we're all really, excited about entrepreneurship, especially after this class. This class has been amazing and connecting us in Northwest Arkansas, and I think we're all we've learned so much about healthcare, probably a little too much. But we're all, I think, really excited about continuing doing it, and still figuring out, and would love any suggestions on how to navigate all of that.
Yeah, and just to touch on that a little bit, I think we all came into the class meeting Emily. I met Emily, back in August, having, and I come from a biomedical engineering background, getting a graduate degree in biomedical engineering and quickly finishing that up, but was fascinated by the science, and it's super relevant to what I've been doing in the lab for the past 3 years. And with that, just really wanted to be connected with something that was not only relevant to me, but also something impactful. So I think we were all here to learn about the market, to learn about what that opportunity to look like, talk to a lot of people who touch this idea, or touch, or in some way would be impacted by this, and then at the end of this, revisit it, decide, what's the path forward, and we're now approaching those conversations. So
it's a real advantage that all of us, we already have a job around, so we can, how to say that, we have all different backgrounds, and every day we learn from our job. Obviously for me, it's a little bit obvious, but I can share all my knowledge with them, and they share all the knowledge that they learn through their different company. That is useful for us. And just to complete, we are 3 scientists here, and it has nothing more frustrating than finishing a project, publish a paper, and not really know if what we create will be useful. So we are able to drive our 2E MBA in the group and say, hey, it has a potential, we need you, because the business is not really what we are designed for, but here we are a team and we can move forward on this project.
Yeah, we didn't do sleepless nights for nothing. If this traction, we're going to see it through.
Can you talk a little bit about the external companies that are currently processing? It sounds as if they have a lot of process problems. So from the 2 to 6 weeks, how much of that is a process issue, paperwork, shipping, and kind of like optimizing for costs? And how much of the problem is actually dealing with the biopsy?
So all these companies are our competitor, but they don't have the same business model, which is strange, but it's true. Guardant, for example, is based on liquid biopsy. Natera to NeoGenomics a little bit. Tempus is driven by data, so their goal for them is to bring more samples to have an AI who pull the data and generate things. And Foundation Medicine was on the first one to do genetic analysis. So they are in the same competition field, but they have different business strategy. So they don't treat the sample the same way. Some of them doesn't care to spend 6 weeks to send back the result because they are driven by other things than to help the patient. The workflow is not optimal because they need to maintain the cost. They are all using Illumina sequencers, so they take a lot of time to batch patients. If you run one patient for one flow cell, it's more than $2,000 or $4,000. If you batch all the patients, you reduce considerably your cost. So this is what they do. They are also heavily sponsored to help to go through paperwork like insurance and stuff. Sometimes we are surprised they can charge patient directly out of pocket, but usually they try to not do this way because they need to obtain data. This is what they need. The workflow is not also optimal in the hospital because pathologists take time to send the sample. Same story, they don't want someone to be focused on only one patient to send one sample. They're going to batch two before to send the sample to the company. Clinician, we have to evaluate which of these companies is the best for the result, but also the best for their patient. Medicare, Medicaid, private company, who is going to reimburse the most, which one. So they have to balance and it takes time. And I think I answered your question.
Awesome, one more. Lots of companies are trying to do things in a smaller way, better way, faster way. As you look at your competitors and use a little bit of business intelligence, can you see that maybe they are trying to go in that direction as well? Can you look at their patent filings or look at research that they're doing to see that they are maybe trying to move toward the same space? Are you seeing any of that competitively?
We check that. We also check their investor, who is in their group, in their team, in their board. Natera and Le Guardant are very aggressive for liquid biopsy. They don't want solid biopsy too much anymore. They see way down the road in the future. So they are not addressing concern now. They are addressing concern for later on. So they built a business really on the future. They are not on the brain market, but they are already FDA validated for other cancer. So that's great. Fortunately for us, brain is much more complicated than other cancer because the majority of the genetic material doesn't flow too much in liquid biopsy because of the brain barrier. So you still have to take a tumor out and do the sequencing. The other one, Tempus, is it's a data-driven company with 23andMe investor. So they really want to get data from clinician by any cost anyway, to be able to build a database on patient. They are driven by cancer, but any kind of cancer.
That was a great answer, Emily.
We've just got a little bit over a minute, and I have two questions, so go fast. What is the cost of acquiring a hospital once you get through all of your FDA issues? And second, I need clarification on the patent. Who actually owns the patent, and are you licensing the patent? It's unclear to me where that resides.
U of A BioVentures owns the patent, and we'd be licensing on 3.5% perpetual, or sorry, UAMS BioVentures. But anyway, we'd be licensing it on a 3.5% perpetual royalty. And right now we have an exclusive license agreement. And then as far as the acquisition costs go, we see that roughly 170, you have this slide there. We see that around 137. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So just the customer acquisition cost is very high, right around 134,000. The reason we did it for 5 years, we see it's going to be a lot harder. There's going to be a long sales cycle trying to get into these hospitals, just given that this is a very complex issue and they want to make sure they get it right. But we see the ability to get that customer acquisition cost down as we get more publications out there and connect with thought leaders and leverage distribution partnerships once you get that FDA approval.
Fantastic. Good presentation. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you
very much.
Woohoo, let's give it up for the teams. Now let's give it up for the judges. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I do have a couple of things that I need to say and then a couple of announcements. It'll be real quick. I know a lot of people are working on the live stream. Hello out there. I'm so glad you tuned in. In case you're not coming tonight, where the rest of you will hear this again, I must thank our sponsors for this competition. It would not be possible without an army of them. First and foremost, the Walton Family Foundation. They do so much for us, so much for this region, so much for entrepreneurs. There's no way to accurately describe it, so let's just give them a round of applause. Thank you. To Jeff Amorine, Cadron Capital Partners, you were the first follower. You guys know that video, the dancing guy on the hill, the leader, and then there's the first follower. Thank you so much for your sponsorship of the Investor Roundtables. It's the first year that we have been able to offer that, and I know I've heard from the teams they loved it, a lot of value in those conversations. Thank you so much to the sponsors who've allowed us to have a whole bunch of special awards this year that you'll hear about tonight. We've never done this before. Wright Lindsay Jennings, Delta Solar, Cannon Capital, Atento Capital, thank you Atento, Arkansas Community Foundation. This is so exciting. It's going to be a great evening.